This is another episode of Summoning Insight. We actually are, by the way, I will point out, we have technically now, I think, gone over the 10 years. It should actually have been this episode. But we'll do it. We'll do a future one. We'll set up. Because the thing on that one, like I said, is really you need to actually arrange that. You can't just do it willy-nilly. So it's all good. Anyway, the point is, basically, this might be a filler episode because let's be real, like Lunar New Year coming up and all that jazz. You've obviously got all the stuff with like the leagues, like in LEC. We're actually coming to a close now. In fact, quite frankly, the ending of this movie sucks, doesn't it? But whatever, I've paid, so I'm going to sit through the last 10 minutes. Hopefully, no funny bloopers. LCS, well, that's just garbage, isn't it? We'll get into that later. Spoiler: like Cloud9 isn't even a top 3 team in the region. Like there's some madness going on this week. So anyway, the point is, this might be a classic rant session. Like, put it this way, in LEC, it's brilliant that like those BDS, like Nook as usual, got offended on Twitter when I implied that BDS being top 3. This is actually before they made like the third place top 2, literally, like before they played the G2 match. I implied that like them. And you remember that point I made to you about Virtus Pro and CS:GO and about how like it's a bad side. Don't worry, he got mega offended by that and then tried to like first of all do the classic one where you imply that like you're good at everything, which is mental. Pro players are just really bad for that. And like you know how they are, mate. If you tell a pro player you're brilliant at laning and your macro knowledge is great, they'll be like, and what about side laning as well? And every 2v2 and skirmish. So I'm bad at that, I'm also like, brilliant. Well, that's my mistake. Did I attempt to compliment you there? Back to trashing you, you can't. So that's me. If you don't know why I am the way I am, just look at when they reply when I actually try giving them a compliment. So anyway, the point is, don't worry, LEC is ruined. Mad Lions and BDS are top 4 teams. It's just a trash region. And I retire from esports in this moment. It was a great run. Had a nice time. 10 years is a pretty good kick for the show. But, you know, probably time to go back to CS2 now. Oh, what's that? They hate me at that game too. Brilliant. Well, here we are, esports 2024.
That's right. And you know, it's tough to go back because now you have to work for the Saudi Arabian government if you want to work on the broadcast circuit. So it's bad times out there. I mean, you can work for Blast, but it's just a matter of time before they are also owned by the Saudi Arabian government. It all roads just lead to Mecca right now. And there's going to be no escaping it.
Yeah, low key. I mean, you know, the silliest thing of all is I always think there's actually a part I should make more overt there that people don't get. You know, when there's actually a bizarre strain of people who deny the sports washing angle and they claim that's not what's going on. They actually probably are stupid enough to think this is like a shrewd investment or something. But I've always thought this. Here's how you know it's sports washing. They don't have to buy it all straight up with their company. They could literally just make 1 million shell companies and just buy them through that, or do stuff like, here's the obvious angle. They could just go and buy properties you already know exist, like Heroic or something, and then just do it through that, and then it'd be Heroic and Fizzer. And suddenly, by the way, if you just did that in a smart way, we didn't announce it in a big fanfare, actually that would allow like at least half the industry just be like, oh, it's just a normal company. So if you actually wanted to just take over, but with none of the cultural aspect, you could have done it. They do it this way. They don't accidentally do it and then put like MBS all over it. They want you to see that. That's like a feature on a blog, isn't it? Like, I think people missing the point on that one. You could easily do it surreptitiously. I mean, as we pointed out, technically someone could actually have bought our company. We wouldn't have been able to stop them if someone had bought out like a bunch of the shares once we'd done like the funding. So you can do at that point. They just own your company, but at least the point is they do it surreptitiously. This way they're also doing it. Here's the other part I don't think people get. The other reason you do it publicly like this, by the way, is so that then when the other side publicly accepts, they're also then complicit in this cultural phenomenon, aren't they? That they're making sort of a statement. Like that's like a line in the sand that you're crossing when you take that deal, isn't it?
Well, I mean, they started with a bunch of the investment into the Premier League team, right? And then because they couldn't buy the entire Premier League, like that was actually impossible. But as soon as they could entirely buy something like golf, they just bought all of golf. So,
of course,
I mean, the proof is there. And if they can buy golf, guys, they could definitely buy our shitty little industry of esports at the moment. However, I do think in the long run, this probably will be a good investment for them because owning esports in like 40 years is probably going to be an amazing investment for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll probably be an amazing investment for them. Losing money now, but the upside is like a lot higher. And if you look at something like golf probably isn't going to get that much bigger. Golf has probably reached saturation of people who like or can play golf, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can get some more people on board, but it doesn't have the same explosive growth potential, which is what everybody was investing in esports anyway for venture capital. And it will get there, guys. It's just going to take a lot longer than we initially thought it would. The exponential growth hasn't been there since like the start of the Twitch days, and it leveled off, and we really haven't gone anywhere since then. In fact, in certain ways, we've gone down, which leads me to our first topic of conversation here, which is now from our glorious commissioner, Mark Zimmerman. we get tweets about the state of LCS viewership, right? And of course, it's good news. He actually screenshots a Reddit thread because, of course,
how is he already 5 minutes in gone like full Biden administration, where you just sort of like, oh, that thing that's taking an upturn because things can't go down forever, and in any context, not even specifically according to me. Well, if there's an uptick, yeah, we were all involved with that. Things are going up, guys. Like, it's so like political, even the way this is framed, isn't it? I know, because like,
of course,
that's the problem, Monty. I've always said this. This is the key that a random fan won't get. But if I give you this lens, it should actually open your eyes, a la the glasses from They Live, and you'll just see it everywhere in esports. When a number actually is for real playing to your favor, Monty, as the company, as the individual, and it's specifically because of you, you go out of your way to explain the specific context in which it's because of you and all the info about the number. When you just mention the number and intentionally don't do that, you can then infer that it isn't any of those things and that it's just the number with no context that looks like it's good for you. But in fact, are you ready? This will blow your mind. If you were to give context, it would fuck your opposition, so you don't. So anytime someone goes, hey guys, check out this number with no additional, then you know it was nonsense. You know, it's just like shit fodder for the media. Like, if it really was them, they'd basically break it all down. In fact, in boring detail, I imagine nowadays, right? You know, press releases are, mate. You go hype if you got a really good number, guys.
I'm just really surprised that it took him such a short amount of time to just go full riot. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a few minutes.
But give the backstory for people who don't know what's happened, because this is a funny one. Go on, give it up.
All right. So, I mean, basically the story is this, guys. As we talked about after week 1 of the LCS, ES Charts, that is kind of the stat tracker for the esports industry, wrote an article. That article said the viewership is down year over year from spring LCS, 2023 for LCS, for spring 2023 to spring 2024. And they said, look, there's a higher peak, but that's because Baiano, a Brazilian co-streamer that they are allowing for the first time ever, he did watch parties before, but now he does co-streaming. He literally switched from CBLOL to LCS with like 50,000 viewers on his stream.
Oh, 50,000. That's legit.
Something like that. And then the instant he switched over, it hit a peak. It had hit the peak of the season.
50K. Yeah.
But then all those people immediately left. So they weren't actually there to watch the game. They were there from CBLOL. And then when he moved over to the new stream,
when he switched, it was just like that the moment he switched, the viewers, right? So hit the fugazi like that number then.
Yep.
Okay.
And ES Charts explained this in the article, right, that we discussed on this show. And so that peak number in week 1 is very suspicious. Now, we also have to remember that Kadril is now co-streaming LCS. Now, he couldn't do this before as an LEC caster.
Yes.
So we have 2 new major co-streamers that are part of LCS. And for the most part, now I would imagine a chunk of Kadril's audience is in fact North American, like Canadian or American.
Just based on YouTube breakdowns and stuff. Yeah, of course.
But probably half to 2/3 of them are not. Okay. And I think it's safe to say that 95% of Baiano's audience is probably Brazilian or Portuguese living in Brazil or Portugal and not in the United States of America or Canada. Maybe there are some.
I mean, the sad thing is, if there was a Brazilian team, they'd all watch but if there isn't one, yeah, you're right. They're just going to switch off after they realize it's not CB all. Yeah, of course.
He does have some decent viewership for LCS. As far as I know, he's been getting like 20,000 concurrents, 10 to 20,000 concurrents for LCS, but it's a far cry from the CB LOL viewership. So this is all to say that we get a tweet of a screenshot of Reddit that says LCS average viewership up 4% compared to spring 2023. He says 2024 is even better in terms of viewership versus past comparisons with actual match viewership, not including pre-post because one less game. Fair. Yes. Full splits, including the playoffs, looking at similar weeks. Fair. So he's saying compare regular season split weeks to week to week. Time shift only started last week. So they moved it a little bit later so that it wouldn't conflict with LEC. Okay. Because LEC was like running into the start of LCS. And as we know, that viewership crushes LCS viewership, so they wanted to wait so they could get the host. from LEC. So I am going to remind you guys of a few things that changed last year. They first off went back and they said, okay, we're going to do this on weekdays. So they couldn't get the LEC host anymore. That was pretty huge because there's a bunch of AFK viewers who are just sitting on the LEC stream.
That just leave the stream up on second monitor or something. Yeah, of course.
They just get shuffled
the
over
game
there.
Still, I've always thought that's an underrated one. If you're still in the game, you're not going to quickly alt tab. You're just going to start watching the match, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you don't know LCS is starting. A lot of people might just be sitting there, be like, "Oh, I'll watch some LCS now." Sure, but there's a lot of people that are being shuttled over, right?
Sure.
And now we know that at least the Brazilian audience occasionally is getting shuttled over from a CBLOL co-stream, and we have Cadril and his massive co-stream in the mix right now. So this is all to say, guys, that if viewership is only up 4% after you switched back to weekends, moved the time so you could not conflict with LEC, and you're getting the host from LEC, and you're getting some massive new co-streamer numbers, and you're only up 4%, what can we take from this data? And the answer is, it must mean, logically, that there are actually fewer North Americans watching LCS, because now this is being bolstered by a bunch of Brazilian and European fan bases, either from LEC, because they weren't getting the LEC host before. They weren't getting Cadril's viewers before. They weren't getting Bayana's viewers before. So logically, the core audience of LCS, and this matters because if you are pretending that this is a real business that you're trying to sell to North American sponsors and have North American eyeballs.
Monty. So they had, like, what was the insurance company they had? Nationwide or something, right? State Farm, there you go. If they have State Farm, like, State Farm doesn't care about a fucking Brazilian viewer or a guy from Lithuania. Like, that doesn't help him. Like, he needs you to actually be an American citizen who can take his service. Yes. Yeah, of course.
And by the way, they just announced AT&T.
If that wasn't the case, then logically, guys, for real, I'll tell you right now what you do. If it's just about having viewership, but it doesn't relate to sales, then you do what a TV show does. On TV show, they just invite people in as like a guest and pay them off the street and like, do you want to watch a show? Hey, just applaud when they applaud. By that logic, we could just pay everyone from India like $1 to watch the match. Like, it'd make the membership good, but it wouldn't help with actual business, would it? That's the point Monty's making. Like, what Mark Z is basically doing, that slimy, is he's acting like if the total number going up for the viewership is like a net good, but in this case, essentially, those are empty calories like that. Those viewers don't help you. In fact, it might be the opposite. The actual NA base, the ones you want to sell to, might have gone down, which is worse. That's bad news.
It has gone down. It has gone down.
Yeah,
that's the only logical conclusion is that it went down, because we could have been more confident that there were a lot of North American viewers when it was on weekdays last year, when they weren't getting the LEC hosts, when Cadril wasn't co-streaming, when Bayana wasn't co-streaming. To say it's only up 4%, the actual meaning of that number is that it has dropped probably relatively significantly. Because if we're saying that 30,000 of those viewers are on a Cadril or Bayano co-stream, we could have seen a 25% drop in North American viewers, potentially. And by the way, they just signed a new deal with AT&T. They just signed a new deal with this Pagoda Egg Rolls company. These are companies coming in that want North American eyeballs. And even if you're Red Bull, right? Even if you're Red Bull, that's coming out of an American marketing budget.
Yes, it doesn't help if the European guy does it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, while it's valuable to them worldwide, the people who are in control of that sponsorship most likely are saying, we want to know how effective this is in America. And they probably don't even really care about Canada, if we're being honest. Sorry, Canadians. Like, that's just how this works. So when you're selling these numbers, like, it's good for Riot if this is purely a marketing exercise for the largest number of eyeballs to sell in-game digital transactions. But if we're pretending this is a real business where we give a shit about the teams and the players, we need to see, because they don't get cuts of that digital revenue, right? We need to see actual American eyeballs to get American sponsors. And by announcing this data, they are either trying to pull one over on potential sponsors that they have. Maybe, I mean, most sponsors will ask for a geo breakdown, so seems pretty easy. But also, the reason why they're not giving any additional insight into this or geo data is because it shows that the Emperor just has no clothes here.
It's like I say, Monty, I'll make it more explicit. If there was a bump in viewership and it was literally North American viewers, they would say it in the post. 100%, 100% it would say, including a rise in North American viewership. Because as we say, that is essentially the money aspect of this. Like, that is the key part. By the way, you know the craziest part of this as well, Monty, is this is where people like Mark C have already shown themselves. Their true colours are completely on display. And if you can't see, you are just colourblind, guys, because this is already incredible. By the way, this is a very minor story. Like, look, I agree with Monty. The bigger implication is quite worrying for the league, but it's presented as a light-hearted, hey, viewership went up a little bit. Isn't that great for everyone, right? The reason why this is insane is because to pick this week to do it on beggars belief, Monty. The idea, for real, this is the level of gaslighting me and you have to endure if we open the internet and allow other supposedly sentient humans to have contact with our fucking naked mind, right? Here's what happens to us. People will actually on the internet gaslight us that the Super Bowl won't draw any eyeballs because one person goes, but I don't watch American football. And we're supposed to actually pretend the Super Bowl doesn't draw any viewership from LCS. That everyone who's watching the LCS, not a single one has a family who has a Super Bowl party, their friend doesn't invite them. None of them are fans of the Super Bowl, by the way. Apparently, like, here's what's mad about that. Haven't we spent the last 10 years going on and on about how our crowd is like sports and how they're all interested in sports too, and there's all overlap and shit? Like, it blows my mind. Like, that's about the most indefensible position possible. Of course, it definitely drew viewership. Definitely. It's like, remember, Monty, that famously the thing about the Super Bowls, I don't know if you know this, now it's even a thing in Europe that some like women watch just for the commercials. Like, they don't even care about the sport. It's actually the only thing where Europeans go hand egg. Some of them still watch the Super Bowl, mate. It's actually the only thing ever that does seem to almost universally make people watch, right? It's just a phenomenon in culture. It's not about the sport, really. That's why, like I say, the idea you can't even just give it up. Like, the most obvious thing to say, Monty, would be the other way around. You'd go, you know what? Overall, we've had a bump in viewership. Obviously, at the moment, we have the Super Bowl. So for this 1 week, it goes down. But that's okay because the Super Bowl's only 1 week. You do that, don't you? You spin it that way. They tried to spin it the other way, as if we're morons for implying that might have drawn some viewership. I can't even believe this gaslighting. Like, why am I even presenting it like it's like an actual court case and no one knows what I'm talking about? It's obvious that they're wrong. They're just obviously wrong, aren't they? Come on.
Of course, but Mark Z has a tweet for that, Thorin. Don't you worry. And the tweet is this. I won't comment on viewership much more during this split because you can't, because the lies come unraveled so easily. But since there was so much concern about why we would possibly stream with the Super Bowl on, week 4 was our best average viewership yet. Super Bowl hurt us by a whopping estimated 2%. Now, this does not say good things. Let's be very clear about this.
The craziest part about that, the craziest part is that he implies a 2% change in viewership is like negligible. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people if you do the stream right, dickhead. That would actually be a good amount. Mate, take this same tweet right here and wait for a few weeks. And if viewership goes up 1%, don't tweet about it, Mark Z. Don't tweet me. If any viewership goes up 2%, don't tweet. It's nothing, mate. It's nothing. It's irrelevant. Don't tweet me. Of course you would. 2%. That's pretty decent.
He tweeted about a 4% increase average viewership. So of course,
it's mad, isn't it? What a world.
But he said it was our best average viewership yet, which, is fine. But why this doesn't say good things is, first off, let's just go through this. Riot does this all the time, guys. They present information as if it is the best possible result. So by streaming on the Super Bowl, we actually had our best viewership. However, let me present some other options for you. What if you didn't do that, and then your viewership was even better on a day that didn't contain the Super Bowl? Why, for example, is your viewership so good during the Super Bowl? Is it because many of the people watching aren't American? Because that's what I'm guessing too. If half of the audience or more is not American and doesn't give a shit about the Super Bowl, then they're still going to watch LCS. Like, it again raises questions about the actual geographic location of these people. And you can't know if you would have done better not streaming up against the Super Bowl. You can't possibly know that. So I don't really understand the point of this.
We'll get to this later, but this is basically the number one annoyance I notice people like me and Dom have about the Mad Lions team in the LEC, is that it's being presented this way, Monty. Mad Lions fans and staff want to be the ones who choose where the timeline stops. So what they do is this. They choose the timeline to stop 1 second before the split began. And then they go, you said we'd be 10th, but actually we're top 4. And then it's like, oh, you're right. You've got me on that one. So if we're doing like a war, you score one battle. Now, here's the bigger battle, though, which is you used to have a contender that was a champion. So if we all said once before that 1 second, if we went back a month before that, when the off season was going on, and we were like, hey, when you have a contender and then you re-up with this squad, you're not going to be a contender anymore. Well, that means basically if Mad Lions now come in 4th place, we were right in the bigger picture, which is you don't have a contender team. You know, we were wrong in the smaller one of where will this specific lineup place. But ultimately, the bigger picture is you did give up being like a top 2 team to become the 4th team at the best, right? So it's the same scenario. Like the point is you have to actually look at the bigger picture of like, what are the expectations? So as you say, we can't A/B test this because there's 2 things from that. One, that actually implies they're implying there, guys, if the Super Bowl wasn't on, it wouldn't have higher viewership. I think that's an absurd premise already. And then 2, there's also, as you say, it's so stupid the way they framed it that if we accept their premise, then logically you should try to stream on the Super Bowl. It makes your viewership go up. That's how absurd the premise is. By the way, I'll tell you right now, I'll tell you what I double fucking dare any Riot executive to ever do is be in a meeting with a huge sponsor and tell them that your viewership goes up when the Super Bowl is on in America. Tell them that, cocksucker. Tell them that when the live Super Bowl's going on, your viewership goes up. Let's see what they think about that. It's a brilliant fucking line, isn't it? See if they love that. See if they want to get on board. I know.
The first question, Thorin, is obviously how many Americans are watching your stream? Like, how many Americans are watching your broadcast? By the way, you know, it's extra funny.
Maxie, listen, I've just solved your whole problem. I'm going to solve your whole viewership problem with the way that Uber Eats works where I live. So I've made this joke before. Whenever I have Uber Eats, the picture is a guy. It might even sometimes be a woman. Like, hey, Sarah with blonde hair's coming. And then you know what? Someone comes along who's called Mohammed, who delivers my food. Just look anything like the picture because he's obviously cynically like bought the ID off someone or like rented the ID. Just do that. Have a bunch of guys call it, I'm Joe Smith from Minnesota. And then just have the Indian guy stream on his Twitch account. There you go. Listen, I might have actually just violated TOS there. That's a joke. That's a purely hypothetical scenario. But all I'm saying is if you do it, it'll work. That's, in esports, that would work. You only need one layer of abstraction. And that's all you need. It works at that point in time. Don't worry. Good enough.
I think what's also funny, Thorin, is like I was sitting there in the morning here in Korea going to turn on the Super Bowl. LCS is on, and you know what I see? A bunch of Riot esports staff just tweeting about the Super Bowl. And I'm like, even you motherfuckers don't give a shit about LCS.
I love it. Yeah.
Of course. I
love it.
There's like Super Bowl stuff, talking all about it. I'm like, it's like the LCS is on. It's like right before the game is starting. So of course, they're not even LCS, like even LoL esports people themselves are not even paying attention to this in America because why would you? Why would you for the most part? And you know, when we talk about...
Like I said earlier, what does that even imply about your audience, bro? Think about this. Let's take their premise for real, boy. Let's imagine their audience all are North Americans, right? So the whole LCS, and make a Venn diagram, Monty. People who like things in life, you know, the overlaps, right? They're implying their whole North American LCS ownership, viewership are such terminally online people. They don't have a Venn diagram overlap with any friends or family in their life who are all watching the Super Bowl. So we just got the most fucking degenerate B-chan users of all time. Like, what fucking Reddit mods are watching the LCS? I know that's mad. Like, because the idea is in America, if you live there, you can't avoid it. Like your friend's going to be doing one, your dad's going to be doing. Give me a break, guys. Are we all so terminally online? What are we doing? What is this implying about us?
They're just watching on their phone while the Super Bowl's going on.
Because you know the maddest thing is the only way this would almost make sense, Monty, is if League of Legends was a huge sport and this was like the finals of LCS, you'd already planned it all, and you were going head to head. Like, dude, we're also implying that someone would rather watch like week 4 of LCS spring regular split BO1 round robin than the Super Bowl. Like, they're not, the stakes aren't even fair, mate. Like, I can skip this one and rewind it, surely. Like, it's not the end of the world for the LCS. Like, that's why it just doesn't, that's why the idea, like I say, that no NA viewers, it was meaningless. It's so implausible. Like, I could maybe believe that, Monty, if you make it more abstract. If you say, like, the Olympics, yeah, maybe Zoomers don't care about that. Everyone who's a pleb is at least watching some of the fucking Super Bowl. Come on. This was even an exciting one, for fuck's sake. Like, you're telling me at the end no one was watching. I don't believe you. I do not believe. Everyone in the universe was watching the end of that game. That was even one of those ones where you can tell people, quick, you better tune in, it's getting insane. Like, of course, come on.
To be fair, LCS was over by the time the Super Bowl ended.
Okay, fair enough.
It was done probably, I think, around halftime. So it did end, not all the way through the game. So it did give people, if they were watching LCS, a chance to watch both. But I mean, we also have to talk about the real reason this is even being done, because obviously we have to ask the question of, why is there a 2-week break? Why is the 2-week break not between the 2 round robins? It was Super Week, then regular week, and then we have 2 more weeks left. So we actually start the 2nd round robin. And the answer is, of course, here's the thing they don't want to say. It's because of VCT Americas. It's because of Valorant. Valorant starts on February 16th in Americas. And even though LCS is going to be in a side studio, so by the time LCS returns, guys, it's not going to be in the main arena. Marksy said that at the start of the split. It's going to be instead in a side arena with no audience. Okay? And
I love it.
Yeah. And if we actually look at the schedule, so VCT America starts, like I said, on the 16th. It goes through the 25th with the group stage, and then they have a play-in on the 26th. And then the playoffs are starting on March 2nd, which is the same weekend that the LCS comes back. So
you know the saddest thing, Monty, I have to say it at the outset, like, this is why we were actually wrong in the most, like, literal sense. Like, hiring Mark Z for the actual effect he has is a brilliant idea. You already see that they can say any old shit, but because it comes out of his mouth, everyone, it's not that people agree. They want it to be good news.
Yeah.
They want to find a way themselves to aid in the spin. It is. And by the way, I like Mark Z. That's the whole quality he has. He's an amiable every man, isn't he? Who, even when he says something slightly over the line, he does it in such an inoffensive manner. You never really get that mad, do you? That's why he actually, in a sense, for practical reasons, he is the perfect hire, Monty, because the joke is, if the same exact info came from even John Needham, they'd get flamed, mate. People would be like, what the hell, she care about League or Valorant more than League? Like, no one's doing that now. Everyone's just finding a way to cope that, like, because Mark Z told us we have to, like, essentially what we're acting like is we're acting like this is his first 100 days as president, and we're just really pulling for him like Obama or something. Like, it's ridiculous, mate. It's so ridiculous.
So they're taking this break. They're taking this break, Thorin, and they're coming back. The weekend they come back is the weekend that VCT is in semifinals and best of 5. So there's 2 semifinals on the 2nd of March and then a best of 5 on the 3rd of March. And while that is happening, concurrently, LCS is going to be in a side studio. Now, it probably won't have that much overlap in terms of actual timing, but that's the real reason. The real reason, guys, is because they've bumped it for Valorant. And even though they got it back on the weekends, the LCS is still playing second fiddle to Valorant. Who can blame Riot? Who can blame them? Like, obviously, LCS is going to play second fiddle to Valorant at the current life cycle in the esports.
I'm going to give you an obvious cynical angle that'll make LCS owners who aren't in Valorant really upset. You know why I'd do Valorant over your game? They've even bragged they have a better digital fucking sales market in that game, dickhead. Yeah. So why would they waste their time putting LCS on when they make more from Valorant? Like, I would prioritize Valorant. Now, look, that fucking sucks. You paid like $10 million in League, but, oh, well, maybe you should have taken that $6 million fuck off, eh? Bad times, boys. Bad times.
So, yeah, VCT Americas is the actual reason. It's because they're doing a lot of games in the group stages during the first couple weeks of competition.
By the way, is your logic that part of this is to save money on the studio as well, to not have to have 2 studio locations or something? Is that the logic as well?
They're using the side studio. So they're using a separate studio to host LCS the same days that they're hosting VCT. It just won't be in front of the live audience. They're using the main stage for that. I think mostly it's just that they're sharing so many resources between VCT and LCS that they can't ask people.
Right.
They can't ask people to do 16th through the 25th on Valorant, and then also have LCS running during that time.
Right.
It's easier to ask people to do stuff if there's only, 2 days of VCT, and they're both playoff days, and then 2 days of normal LCS, right?
Sure.
Because that way you have the week beforehand to prep everything. Because if you're trying to prep LCS while VCT is just running consecutively for those 2 weeks, so it makes sense if they're sharing resources, they're sharing a studio, that you do this. But they are not fucking honest about this. They present it like, yes, it is smart that we put it on Super Bowl Sunday. It's not. You're doing it because your back is against the wall, because you're trying to run VCT and you are prioritizing. There is no other way to read this besides you are prioritizing VCT. Do I blame them? No. I would do exactly the same thing from a business perspective. But it's the way they just basically lie about it and expect you to eat all this PR bullshit that doesn't even make sense when it's so transparent. If you think about it for 2 seconds, what is actually going on here? And besides, we're now celebrating, and this isn't even to start with. We're celebrating a 4% average viewership uptick. Again, that's not even American. This league in 2016 and 2017 was having 250 or 300,000 average concurrent viewers. The drop, it is like 33% of what it used to be. They've lost more than half their viewership.
It's the same context as what I said earlier, the same lens you can apply, Monty. Number goes up, that means all in giant inferences. It means like that we've done a good job. It means the sport's growing. It means that there's going to be more money and more interest. And it means that all of our ideas are right. Right, number goes down. That doesn't necessarily mean something bad, guys. It doesn't necessarily mean the sport's dying. It doesn't necessarily mean there's not as much money. It doesn't necessarily... Well, which is it, you daft cunt? Whichever way it goes, it's both, isn't it? It's either indicative of something or it isn't. If it isn't, then you can't fucking say when it goes up that it's indicative of what you want. So it's just the stupidest thing about esports. Because think about that, Monty. If someone said to you, what if the viewership was like 6 times less? You wouldn't go, well, I wouldn't say that it means the business is any worse, though. Maybe it's just... That would be an absurd thing to say, but that's actually the premise that we're doing. But on the basis that it didn't instantly go from 300 to 50k, Monty. It just gradually went down over time. And so we've been able to like do this managed political sort of decline of sort of like, well, here's the reasons, and here's another reason, and here's another reason. And let's just change days. In fact, you know what I think right now, Monty? I tell you what I actually think. I don't think there was ever real data that ever said if you went to like a Wednesday and the viewership went up. I think that was just fucking not arranging deck chairs on the Titanic because you think it's a good view, just to distract people. As long as people see some movement, oh, they're moving the chairs around, they're doing something. I think that's what you were doing. I think this decline's just been a line going down on a graph for years. And what you do is you try anything. You try any little like sort of scenery change to make it seem like, hey, maybe it could change. Yeah, it's not a terrible concept. It's just the main problem you have really is this. And this is also the other problem, Monty, about why we hate it. That Riot never admit they did anything wrong. Is at this point, you probably killed the golden goose of the LCS. I've always made this point back in the day that you can never recreate, because the analogy is like wrestling, Monty. Even if you like wrestling now, you can't really recreate like the fucking attitude era of the WWE in like the 90s, can you? Like, it's gone. It's too many years past. Those stars are gone. They've retired. It's the same with the LCS. That era you had where it was the #1 streaming location. The streamers were actually a huge part of it, like TSM and CLG. And you had all those giant personalities, these crazy rivalries. Back then, the joke is even then, EU fans did used to watch that as their second league, as the main other league to watch. Like, nobody used to watch the LCK. The LPL wasn't watched by nobody. That era, that has been and gone. That was a fucking amazing, like, oasis in the timeline of league, but I don't think you can get back there. Like, you can start over like this and figure out, how do I make this product today a little bit better and encourage viewership? But I think essentially you can't recapture that. To me, that's almost like a cultural phenomenon, Monty. That was like fucking when pogs were a big thing, or fucking yo-yos or whatever. You know, when for a few years things just pop off. Yeah. You can't recreate that. You can't come back in the playground now with fucking pogs. Obviously, it's a joke. Don't make a scene about Thorin going to playground with toys. You can't go now. Hey, kids, what up with pogs? Then they'll be like, fuck, full. See, now that sounds worse because I've set it up that way. But I mean, because of the pogs angle, not just me being a weird person offering school kids toys. But enough about LCS offering school kids toys. I've been on them now, exactly. Not on me. It's not on me anymore.
I just think the takeaways here are, like, if they announce an increase in viewership, they don't announce why and who are those viewers, which are definitively not American viewers. almost certainly, like 99.9% certainty, North American viewership has decreased because of the influx of co-streamers who attract non-American fans. Totally fine, but it doesn't help the actual revenue of the league. If esports is going so well and we didn't have an LCS that is a fraction, a tiny fraction of the viewership that it used to be, why are we doing massive layoffs, Thorin? That's weird. Strange. You know, why would we get rid of all these people on LCS if it was doing just as fine and dandy as it was many years ago?
Doesn't this put a whole new spin on that point I made last year, where when Riot, it was basically implied that, like, when they gave that option to the teams, like, we might just cancel the whole split. Remember I said last year, like, bro, why would they just cancel the whole league? Now you sort of wonder, like, that. I don't think that threat was like completely like fake. I think they actually were thought like,
oh, I thought it was a real threat.
Because essentially that's like when your parents don't want to do something anyway, then you're annoying them. They're basically like, double dare me, motherfucker, I'll just quit the whole thing right now. Why should I do it? Like, that's the vibe I got from that. Like, that wasn't a good fucking message, boys. The last thing you want the league saying they might close down. Like, what?
It was also a threat to the teams to get them to resolve the issue, because they knew if they shut it down, the teams wouldn't get their rev share, and the teams would be on the hook for these contracts. So they were trying to like push the teams to pressure the players. I'm pretty sure it was.
You know the saddest thing, Monty? This actually is the ultimate example. I love to collect quotes that I think are quite kind of like a poignant take on life, or they've got a shrewdness to them. You know that quote that goes, "You can accomplish pretty much anything as long as you don't mind who gets the credit." Have you ever heard it before? It's a fucking banger quote, because I've found it's true. What happens in businesses is really what will fuck your project up is that you have to have the project succeed while also like telling everyone I did this, or like firing people so it looks like it's you. If you just really just want it to get done, but you're okay at the end that some little rat might just go, it was all me, and then they'll get all the credit. As long as it gets done is all that matters to you. This is an example of that, because I've always thought personally, Monty, that's exactly why Riot can't actually unlock. By the way, this is the coolest thing I'll even say. I think Riot are the only ones who even had a chance to go to the fifth gear of esports. People like Blizzard always got capped by the game. StarCraft 2 could never be the popularest game in the whole world, Monty. It was a 1v1 hardcore game. Even things like Overwatch, they had like a player base, but they didn't have a viewer base. Like, no one else has ever had the sweet spot of the player base and the viewer base and the whole world unlocked, so that you could really have taken esports like the best level ever. And what stopped them with Riot is it had to be what I just said. They had to get all the credit for it. It had to be that whoever in Riot esports made that decision, he got all the credit. And so as a result, they won't let anyone else appear to have been the reason why it happened. Because here's the most obvious thing ever to me, Monty. If you allowed full open core streaming, so long as people use your sponsor assets, I actually think you could get back to those numbers, mate. Can you imagine what the LCS would be like if you were core streaming it, and then Dom was core streaming it, and then Ella? And the idea is, yes, on some level you're going to cannibalize each other, but then you also have your own viewerships that just follow you. I actually think that if you collected all the people, by the way, then throw in, because it's open, now focus from other games if they want to earn some money. You know what? Maybe Scump turns it on one day and watches, I don't know, Nade Shots Team 100 Thieves. You know what I mean? Like, think of the possibilities, mate. Like, this for real, if they didn't care about it all being on the LCS broadcast, which, let's be real, I'll tie it into that FTX thing. I think they want it on the LCS broadcast so that Riot can do their own deals, as usual, don't have to share much of those with everyone else, and then they get the lion's share. And then the guy at Riot Esports gets to go to his boss and go, I'm a genius, look at the revenue, look at the viewership. Instead, if you just wanted the overall number to be, hey, because if I'm in League of Legends North American Esports, the number I care about is the total viewership. I don't care where it's coming from. If I hear the total number is 200k again, dude, this is a new world we're in. Like, now, in fact, you can even make all these cool stories in the mainstream. Like, wow, like, you know, almost like amateur fucking streams and production, like blowing up in esports, like a new sector of interest in the media space or whatever. Like, I actually feel like, for real, that's an obvious, that is like cutting off your nose to spite your face. The problem is you don't want Tarek and Scump and Dom and Doublelift to get all the credit and Monty to get the credit. You don't want everyone, you want it to be you who gets the credit. It's the classic Riot problem that will always be there, which is the joke is they really will cut off their nose, fucking ears, eyebrows, lips, chin, just to spite their face. They're so silly. They're so silly as a company. What they don't seem to get still, Monty, is we actually naively, unlike you, Riot, want this motherfucking thing to succeed. Some of us will actually even do things mildly against our own interest to make it succeed. I know you can't conceive of that because a thief thinks everyone steals. I get it. I get it.
Well, the thing, Thorin, I mean, even if you go back historically, I'm literally looking at a Reddit thread right now from 8 years ago that charts LCS, EU and NA LCS viewership.
It must have been a lot 8 years ago. Come on, hit me with the numbers.
From 2015, week 1, average viewership in North American LCS was 241,000 per game. Which is almost, and this is with no co-streamers. This is no co-streamers. Imagine if they had co-streamers at the time, right? Imagine if they had allowed co-streaming. That was just on the mainstream. It was 2.5 times higher than
just random games. This is like Dignitas against Curse coming up next. Like I know
average viewership across all games for week 1 of NALCS in 2015, and this was spring, I believe. Hold on. I think it was spring.
It would make sense. Viewership usually drops in summer, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was spring, but not 100% on that. It does say 241,000. So, considering it was barely above 100,000, and that was with all of the co-streamers included, it was 2.5 times higher in 2015. Yeah, I don't understand how we're having a celebration about a 4% increase in viewership when the reality of this league is that it's just been tanked. It's just been tanked.
In every respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the saddest thing of all is like that's why I actually think also the timing on all those discussions the last few years of like, hey, you should only have NA talents. And what do we do with the league? Where's all the amateurs? It's like, bro, you are aware the one last thing the LCS had as a like sort of narrative draw was we're going to sign big name imports and put together crazy rosters. Like that was the last fucking hook you had, you idiots. And instead you're like, hey, you know what? As the last step, we should just make it only NA players. Like, what are you talking about? No one's going to... You won't even watch that, you idiot. You won't even watch that.
I mean, the reality of this situation is that, the only way to save this thing, as I've said, is probably, the Brazilian viewership matters.
It's obvious, yes.
If you make Americas...
Even if you don't make the leagues combined, at a minimum, we said it earlier, here's what you do. One Brazilian team, one all-Brazilian org in the LCS, and immediately those viewers are staying, and now you have real permanent viewers. And also, do you know how, look, I can't lie, I don't think North Americans are prepared for this. You're not prepared for the LEC studio thing of fist fights and people saying, I'll kill you based on our country's shared animosity over hundreds of years. But I'll tell you what, the Brazilian fans will fucking run rampage over the LCS. You'll get so much engagement, it'll be insane. Like, look, here's the thing, Monty. It's not like it's my preferred solution. It is very much sort of like a Suicide Squad type movie angle of sort of like, well, just get together all the bad guys and we'll just try and win anyway. But like, it will work if essentially, I'm going to do, my joke would be if I was, because I was born to play this role in esports. If I was King Thorin Longshanks from Braveheart, Monty, then I would say, send the Brazilians. Viewers cost money. Send the Brazilians. Just unleash the Brazilian hordes. Just let them run rampage across the fucking steppe, as it
were. Running over the heath.
If anyone knows the reference.
I know what you're talking about. So anyway, this is all to say, like, we've had a long decline. And by the way, guys, we are now crowing about a 4% increase in LCS viewership, while LCK, by the way, is hitting new viewership peaks, and they're getting 1 million viewers on Gen G versus T1 in week 1, not even including the Chinese viewership. And they're like, oh yeah, LCK is just like new peak every year, new peak. LCS has been in the dumpster it's been declining, or has been vastly far off its peak, at the very least, for, 7 years
Here's a stat for you, Monty. If people don't know, the entire country of South Korea is about just under 52 million people. Yes. And spoiler, most of them don't watch esports.
2% of the country.
So, like, that just shows how insane their conversion is. That's insane. Yeah. And also that shows that they're able to get international viewers as well, because remember, the English streams are pretty good, yeah.
That includes English stream. It's really big in Vietnam as well. Like, obviously, there is viewership in China that isn't counted in that. So yeah, it is, it's not great. Here's, and we can look at this, but NALCS 2016 summer finals had 350,000 concurrent viewers. That was summer finals 2016. And this was around the peak that we're talking about with LCS.
I've got one other solution. This one's a bit more out there, but all I'm saying is if you really care about big international finance, this wouldn't be considered beyond the pale. But what I'm about to say is purely a skit/fictional. Any names or likenesses to real people are purely coincidental and for legal purposes are not advised to be taken as serious. So basically what I would do is this, Monty. I would essentially, I won't say in what context the relationship would be because of the particular nationality of the person. I'll keep that polite. I would say I would embroil in a kind of, let's say, complicated political public relationship, Faker. And then after I compromise him, I would tell him, bad news, Faker, next year you have to play in the LCS. We've got to get those viewership numbers up, mate. And he goes, but the LCS, I want to stay in LCS again. You go, now, Faker. You do know how we just caught you. This indiscretion looks awfully bad, doesn't it? But we could clean it all up if you just came over to the LCS for a year because you're looking to do a sabbatical, aren't you, at the end of your career? Yes, I believe I am, Mr. Merrill. I'll be there on Monday. Because I'll tell you what, if Faker comes, mate, that might be the one thing that could move the needle, you know. I don't.
Is this how Messi is coming over to like save the MLS?
It must be something like that, right? It must be some shady shit like that.
So Faker's going to be the Messi of coming to Miami, the equivalent. To save soccer in America.
We can even do it like Messi. You know, we got that like fucking Fugazi, like best player of the year award and Ballon d'Or. We'll do the same thing. If Faker comes to LCS, he's like the MVP. All his fans will be like, hey, he's still the best player. Like, and he'll probably win fucking PC player of the year again, won't he, for winning LCS and getting the most solo kills on like fucking Jensen or something. Like, give me a break. Like, what a world. Basically, that's all you have to do. But all I'm saying is this, Riot. Listen, you've got some budget left. If you could just give me 100k and Sydney Sweeney and enough soju, I can make this happen. I can have Faker playing for FlyQuest next year. So you let me know what you need, and I'll make the rest of the deal happen.
All right. Well, that's enough about that. Just thought I'd put this out there because, like,
obviously the joke there being that Faker would actually know who she is because that's the only euphoria he's ever seen. See what I did there? Whatever. It wasn't bad. I should have tied it in earlier, but it's all good. In the end, it was a good joke. It was all right in the end, wasn't it? It's all right. Yeah, it's all good.
But yeah, it just tilts me when I see this. Like, it's just such fraudulent behavior to be putting this out there as if it's a good thing, when clearly anybody with a brain in this industry or any of the sponsors that you're selling to are going to do their due diligence on this, and they're going to find some bullshit. Like, it's,
you can't win though, Monty, because everyone's like, yeah, but what have you got against Mark Z? Well, I'll tell you the first thing I've got against him. He's using literally his likeness and reputation to, checks notes, sell absolute bullshit even he doesn't believe. Is that not a reason to have against someone? Like, at this point in time, surely there's a line to be crossed here. Like, if you come in, guys, like, what's going on upstairs? Someone who's not your dad, she's fucking your mom, and you're like, who the fuck is this? Get out! And then turns on Mark Z, and he goes, "Oh, sorry, just had to do this." Would you just go, "Oh well, sorry, Mark, my bad. Carry on there, mate." Tell you what, you want a cup of tea, little fucking rug? Give me a break. Like, he's not. What you don't understand is this, guys. If he's deciding this, then he's to blame. If he isn't, then he's just a fucking puppet. No,
Thorin,
he's obviously just for you to like him, you idiots. It
was clearly for your mom's benefit. Her orgasms were up 4%, even if 7 years ago they're down 200%.
Listen, you said you wanted a baby brother. He's on his way. What are you complaining about now? Oh, from your dad, I guess. Well, now for being all specific, LGN viewers. And then basically your brother comes out. He looks like fucking piano. What are you complaining about? It's a viewer. It's another proud All-American in your family. What's your problem? I know it doesn't look like you, but don't worry about that. You know, viewer's a viewer. Also, the joke is, there's my last joke of all. The last thing that I have to say is this is how you can also spin it as a positive, because actually natalism in Riot has gone up because they've also realized they better start literally producing viewers at this point in time. So all just having 10 kids, like, there you go, get the viewership up, right? Turn it all on. There you go. Those all count. Nielsen, where are you? Where are you, Nielsen?
Too good. Yeah. That's it.
Mate,
that's what...
Considering this is like a filler episode, we've already done fucking work. We've got like Sydney Sweeney and Faker. We've got like fucking some shit with the core streaming. We've been doing work, mate. We're doing better work than they are with their broadcasts. We're getting fucking gold out of this. Like, we're on some Rumpelstiltskin spinning fucking straw into gold at this point in time.
All right. Well, guys, before we get into our next piece of the show, we do have Esports Bet, because of course they're back once again. Thank you for their sponsorship. They still, I know you think, and this is a special announcement for you guys, that of course potentially, we wouldn't be seeing the Chinese New Year promotion again, because obviously Chinese New Year is now over and we're going to be seeing those games one more time. But no, the Chinese New Year promotion is still available for you guys. Don't you worry about that. Well, I lost my cursor. Oh, this is going to be an interesting problem.
What you mean
me,
is your cursor on-screen time is down 1%, but ultimately, as long as you know where it is,
there we go. I found it again.
Not a net negative, is it? So,
So if you guys want to pick up this promotion, of course, you just go to the promotions tab over on the side. You can check here for the red envelope frenzy. Go over here and it'll say apply the bonus. It'll contact customer service for you. Basically, whether you're a new user, an old user, whatever, you can actually get $100 USDT for free if you deposit $100 or its equivalent in USDT. 100,000 esports coins, which you can use for free, and then you can transfer them into other forms of cryptocurrency. And then also you get one risk-free bonus bet on any LOL Spring Tier 1 game. Of course, that is a game in the major regions, up to $50 USDT or its equivalent in another cryptocurrency. You can ask customer support about how that actually works. I believe it is placed on your first bet that you make after that. So it will be a risk-free bet. There are, of course, turnover requirements, so be sure to look at those before you go and make your predictions. In the meantime, though, Thorin, we do have a variety of games this week. Not too many because it's like all LEC. LCS is off. LPL is still off up until early next week. So what we, in fact, have to work with here is one LEC game that we know of, because the rest of the matchups are going to be set after the Fnatic Mad Lions game, and LCK. So Fnatic Mad Lions, bit of an interesting one. Fnatic, a heavy favorite at 1.378 to Mad Lions at 2.741. You liking the underdog here? Or is that too much for you? It's a pretty big underdog for Mad Lions with a team that's done pretty well, I think.
Here's the problem is before this last weekend, I would say, like, don't do this. It's just a terrible one. But I actually have to say, the real problem is Fnatic, like, could easily have lost that series against SK, mate. They could easily have lost that one. Like, there was many times in that where, like, it wasn't even just them. Like, SK had to help them out, basically, to lose the game. So, like, even though I don't believe in Mad Lions, like, as a team, those odds are pretty big. Like, maybe a baby bet on the underdog, I feel like might be the move there. It's possible. Listen, I've seen enough games where, like, they can definitely lose Fnatic. They can fucking lose a lot of games. So, if those odds are that crazy, we have to give it a go. We can't bet the Fnatic side. We can't rely on them.
That's fair. All right. We'll talk more about this, guys, on Competitive Edge. You can head over to the Esports Bet YouTube channel and hear our final predictions on that and a variety of other matches this week as we talk through the odds and which ones we think are potentially having good value. So thank you very much to Esports Bets. Always appreciate them as a sponsor. And be sure to check out their YouTube channel as well. All right. You want to talk about some of these LEC matches that went down?
Let's do it.
You want to talk about SK Heretics? Because
you know what's funny is, like, if you think that it was just my opinion, that thing about BDS being top 3, etc., right? The reason you can tell that's the case, Monty, that everyone sort of low-key agrees with me, is because if these are just, if what really happened is this, Monty, BDS and Mad Lions are just incredible League of Legends teams. They've just figured out, like, how you create a roster, you blend it together, like shot-calling elements, drafting, the players maybe have more value than we understood individually. Then it'd actually be cause for celebration. The LEC is so good that now people like Jankos, Perks, and Wonder finishing 8th place. That's brilliant. That's actually cause for celebration. We must have the most stacked LEC of all time. No. After those two results, G2 banging out BDS mega hard, and then Mad Lions winning in, like, quite frankly, was just looked like Vitality wasn't even in the game. Everyone in Europe is bombed out right now. Did you not see all the tweets from, like, the famous players? It was all like, what's happened to my region? Like, what the fuck? Oh my God, LCS is done. Dude, there's, like, coaches that are just, like, essentially, like, the region's just dead. It's just G2. Like, Bro, this is looking so bad right now. And that upper bracket final, by the way, is exactly why the region's in bad shape. Because, mate, I needed BDS to at least make that a great series. You know what I mean? Even if they lose, if that's like a really close series and they test fucking G2, the joke of that one is they even got like decent laning phase and they couldn't do anything at all. Like it was so impotent. By the way, I even said to people, tell you what, as much as I don't like him, I told everyone Adam is the best top player. I mean, the joke is irrelevant, might be giving him a run for that, but he's not in the tournament anymore. Dude, Adam actually was better than Broken Blade. Like, he actually is fucking good. But mate, then they can't beat G2. The saddest part about the league for real is it really is G2 here, and then who gives a shit who's second and third? Like, look, if you are BDS, you're going to battle for it. Maybe you can get it. Probably them and Fnatic, but fucking hell. G2s themselves aren't even looking that dominant, and they look so much better than everyone else. It's fucking crazy, mate. The league looks really bad right now, I'm afraid.
I mean, Thorin, last week I talked about BDS's strategy and the way that they had won all of these games, which is basically that they play a variation of pick compositions with a controlled mage mid laner. You know, Nook plays Orianna, Nico, or Azir. That's it, guys, except for one game of Akali. Literally, that's what Faker's doing too. It's not bad. It actually allows you to have the best laning possible, laning phase, more versatility, you know, good late game scaling. These are good champions. It's not an issue to play these.
That way he can be all aggro on top links. He's got the stable mid laner. Yeah, of course. It's perfect.
So, you know, and because they can't ban them all out, you're always going to get one of these things. And they also have hard CC that allows you to create picks. I said, here's what Sheo does. He plays Xin Zhao or Vi or occasionally Poppy, because they're early game junglers that allow you to isolate targets, provide crowd control, dive, and skirmish around in the bot side, okay? I said, here's what Ice does. He plays Varus or Jhin. I mean, basically he plays, Ashe, Varus, or Jhin. All AD carries with long-range forms of engage with heavy lane push, maybe not Jhin so much, but Ashe and Varus. He only goes to Jhin if Ashe and Varus are not available. Super meta picks. I mean, so are the control mages in the mid lane. And then Labrov, what does he do? Plays a lot of Blitzcrank, plays a lot of hard engage. What do we see in Adam in the top side? Sure, he's playing more Rumble now. That's true. He's rounded out with more meta champions, but also they allow him to potentially be able to flex into some of the weirder champions within his champion pool as long as they draft far enough back in the draft. And how they play these compositions is they set up good vision, they get a pick on entry by controlling space and controlling vision, and then they take objectives, right? They play around getting picks around Baron and Dragon. This is a lot how T1 plays a lot of the time. I think they are heavily inspired by T1. And you know what? Credit to this roster. They learned how to play this style. This style is very difficult to ban out in the current meta, which I assume is why they are running this style, is because they can basically play the same thing every game with different kind of like iterations, like, you know, on a theme, but still functionally it works the same way. Now, the problem with this is when you have an opponent that is very prepared for the way that you play. And what we saw from G2, and these games are really good by G2. I want to emphasize, I think the prep was really good. The execution was really good. If you guys want to see my long form thoughts, I just released a series of highlights on my...
was like smurfing, but true. I'm with you. It was a good game.
I mean, like, so I released some highlights of my thoughts from my VOD reviews onto, it's edited, so it's the quick version for you guys of this series onto my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But there were some really brilliant masterstrokes here, such as, okay, we're on 14.2 now. Well, AD Twisted Fate has been buffed. So now this is going to be a flex champion, apparently between mid and top lane, because that's where he ends up getting played. Well, what does TF do? Conveniently, he presses R, and you can see the entire enemy team. Really hard to make picks when you can see the entire enemy team. And because Ashe was banned in this series by G2 in every single game, by the way. You're not getting Hawkshot, so you might as well have TF ult to light up the map. And it also allows you to make picks on them, right? It allows you to basically sabotage the biggest advantage that BDS has, which is darkness and blitzcranks and like a Xin Zhao in a bush. They really just eliminated that threat altogether. And they picked, you know, we haven't seen Ice playing the Kalista. Meanwhile, Hans Sama just gets Kalista every game, which is outrageous to let him have this champion every game. It's first off super powerful right now. And as everybody knows, is a Hans Sama signature champion. It arguably, alongside Draven, is his signature champion. He gets that every single game. And they also do other things to help themselves against the compositions that they're seeing. Like you get a Taric alongside the Kalista, prevents any kind of real engage from coming down, because as soon as they play into you, you just have the ability to have that ultimate, and provides you with at least some kind of more short range engage with the Taric stun. All right, let's go to the next game of this series. Here's another clever draft. G2, now they're going to be on red side. Oh, wait, is a Cassante flex pick into the mid lane. And guess who could play Yasuo on the top side? It's Broken Blade. Bringing back the classic lane Gnar counter. Classic Gnar counter in lane.
The old Darshan one from fucking CLG TSM back in the day.
It's always been a Gnar counter, because Wind Wall absorbs Boomerang, and if you don't catch Boomerang, you don't get the cooldown refunded, and now Boomerang has a 20-second cooldown, and you fucking suck in lane as Gnar. And you can't trade because Yasuo is dashing through all the minions and fucking your shit up. It is a nightmare matchup for Gnar. But because it's an early Cassante pick, and they bait out the Gnar pick because Gnar has been increasingly picked into Cassante this year. We've seen it in LCK. Oh, well, here's our pivot. Now we're going to do, and we've seen Cassante mid from Chovy also this year on Gen G. Okay, we'll just play Yasuo in the top side, have an AP jungler on the Lilia. We can long-range sleep you, and then we can knock you up with Kalista ult or with Braum ult, and then we'll get a multi-man Yasuo ultimate, right? Like, it's a very well-designed composition. Okay, now we're going to go into game 3. At this point, BDS is completely out of sorts. They just lost 2 games playing with the Blitzcrank, playing with the Xin Zhao, trying to make picks, right, with the Poppy, trying to be a lane bully with Adam. They got fooled by the Twisted Fate. They couldn't make picks. They just abandoned that now. And Sheo has played Brand before this season, or before this series. He has played it this season, but it hasn't been his go-to. And it's also just not a good pick for BDS, because Brand is a hard farming jungler. You don't have the early pressure anymore. And now you're trying to deal with Hans Sama and Mickey X in a 2v2 in the bot side. Simultaneously, BDS looked like they had never seen an Ivern before. They are literally just walking into Daisy and getting punched, knocked up by Daisy, just like uppercutted into the sky. Like, I was like, why are they standing in choke points, just getting the Daisy beat down and picked off? Like, they didn't know what to do. They had no idea what to do in this game. And Adam tries to play Jax into Cassante. Well, spoiler, Jax ain't a Cassante counterpick anymore, guys. It never was in the early game. Divine Sunder is gone, and now Cassante just basically owns Jax's ass at every single phase of the laning phase. You can't just one item spike into a winning lane matchup. So, I mean, I don't know what to say really about this scenario that BDS found themselves in. They were completely they were outdrafted, outplayed, fucked up by G2. G2 dominated them. And sure, it's not a great sign for Europe that G2 is this strong, but I don't really care, because I think G2 looks like a very good team right now. If I'm being honest, and I will release my power rankings later this week, you know, they're a top 10 team in the world right now, especially with how shaky some of the mid-table teams like look in LCK and LPL. No way this team isn't top 10. Like, they have...
Well, the key thing is the glow up in the playoffs has been huge. Like, before they did look like they were just sometimes falling in, or just actually sometimes bad in some of those regular season games. But I'm with you. The real problem is this. This is why it's so fucking stupid that the BDS players come at me. Because what I'm essentially saying, you stupid idiots, is that's how I know your team is very well coached. I mean, one, I actually know some of the coaches of BDS. But as usual, no fan will ever believe I ever know anyone, even though I then magically bring them on shows and say things like, sure, I've already talked to them. But let's all put that out of sight, out of mind for a second, right? What I'm essentially saying about BDS is, yeah, guess what? I don't actually think these are the best players in all of Europe. It's why I actually gave it up to Adam that this split. I do think he was the best top player, because actually, if I just look how he even plays, I think actually in isolation, even he was the best. He still does a lot of the same silly things, but his upside has been way bigger. But the rest of the team, can you fucking slow your roll down? Who else in this team is getting called the best at their role? Nobody. None of them. Like, no one thinks Nook is at the level of Caps. No one thinks Labrov is better than fucking Mickey X. Nobody even has Shio in conversations with the best fucking junglers. Like, the point is, this team actually is a very good example of how the right coaching staff can make a lesser roster into a pretty good roster. Like, it's actually, like you say, it's the way that they play together and the game plan and the protocols that's put this team at the top of the table. Because if, as G2 did, you neutralize all of that and just make it a game of 5v5 League of Legends, they're not that good. They're just not. It's why, essentially, the bigger point I was also making that idiots like Nook still don't get is this. Bro, you better hope you come third this split, because if you go to MSI with this team, you are going to get fucking blasted out of the server. Like, there are teams like BLG, you won't even be in the game. You will never get started in the game. Gen G, you aren't even going to have a chance. Like the dream that this can happen against, no. There won't even be the BO1 fluke, in my opinion. So, like, that's why listen, I understand when players are on top, they're always going to shit talk if they think you knew anything that's a slight against them. But the joke is, I actually was essentially complimenting the fucking coaching staff. And bear in mind, most times we can't infer what coaching staff does. Isn't this a great example of where, like, the people at BDS have to be killing it? They must be one of the best coaching staffs in Europe, in my opinion.
Sure. I think they're doing a great job. And you have to work with the tools they have. And they've created a very effective team by teaching them to, like, they identified strong ways to play in this meta, which are partially borrowed from T1, in my opinion. Like, because T1's the only other team, like, playing Jhin, right? You know, they love to play these kind of pick compositions. It's the same champion pool that Faker's running right now. It is a strong way to play the game. So they've identified a strong way to play the game. They have enough champions that can't ever be fully banned out. You will always have options, and the players know all of the scenarios with the different laning phases of the champions that they have. Now, the problem comes in when you are literally, by game 3, forced onto the brand because your style isn't working. You're like, well, we can't just lose 3 games in a row of doing the same thing. So now we have a brand. And also, I guess we're going to counterpick ourselves in the mid lane by taking Azir into Hui, even though we've seen Hui just dumpster Azir in lane. But you really are just, like, running out of options. Like, what is Adam going to do in the top side? You know, what is he going to do? I guess he's just going to play Jackson to Cassante and then get bodied in the matchup. It's hard because basically pound for pound, player for player, G2 is better. G2 also is more veteran players, and they have a deep knowledge of how to play a variety of different team compositions. G2 has shot calling that adapts and is very mutable, is protean in the game. And so they are able to make weird compositions that honestly nobody else in the world probably could make work. And this has been I don't know how they've kept it while changing all their players, Thorin. Like, but it's the same shit that used to be great about them, you know, in 2019. And it's still great about them now.
I mean, you could also argue this is why them actually doing the run back of all 5 players, which has become a rare thing actually in esports, is kind of like a bold move, because the upside is if you actually can make it work, like the individual form doesn't drop off, you can get edges like this where people are just more comfortable experimenting because you've been together for so long, you've tried so many different waves of metas and picks and comps and different ways of playing that you can actually just experiment. Like in this scenario, by the way, this is also where if you're the dominant team, perfect time to fuck around. You're in the upper bracket final, you're such a lock anyway. You probably make it to the final from lower bracket. Experiment a bit. And in this particular case, it looked fucking awesome, mate. Like, if that's how they're going to play in the upper bracket, mate, why would it be any different in the rematch? Like, right now, BDS would just get rolled again if they come to this rematch. That's why I actually feel like at this point, you almost have to hope Fnatic going to heater, because who the fuck's going to beat this G2? Nobody's the answer, right? It is nobody. Nobody's going to beat them.
And you know what, Thorin? I was shocked it wasn't a 3-1, because normally we see a troll game from G2. Game 3, when they're up 2-0.
Mate, they were locked in this one. Like, for example, I'll tell you what, as well as the team and the coaching staff, Caps clearly just fucking peaks for the playoffs at this point in time. Like, this was not the player I saw in the first 2 weeks of the LEC.
No, he's terrible.
He looked way better in this series. This was like prime Caps, yeah.
He started getting better towards the end of the best of ones, like the last week of best of ones, and then he's been quite good throughout these playoffs. He looked really solid in this series, like especially the Hui game was extremely good. And yeah, G2 they figured out BDS, and this is what I said. BDS, when you do this in best of ones, it can work. Because teams can't specifically prepare for you. When they have a week to break down your style, This is what happens when a group of players with very deep champion pools and very good knowledge of different comp win conditions, how they can completely dissect you. I mean, credit to Dylan Falco. Holy shit.
Yes.
Like this guy, he
might be the GOAT coach of Europe, mate. He's mega, isn't he? He's just unbelievable.
He had the blue side counter strategies. He had the red side counter strategies. He baited them into specific picks. He had answers when those picks were chosen, just flexing the Yasuo up there. He forced them out of their comfort zone, and then they tried to play a style that they're just not good at, and then they got bopped even harder.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, that's actually something that Abadage told me in my interview with him. For obviously, he was coaching Schalke by Dylan Falco. I agree with him. Dude, Dylan Falco is the best coach at getting the other coach to draft what he wants. That
like mind controls them.
He's amazing, isn't it? Like essentially, because every time he does the same move, guys, he does it where he makes it seem to you like you're winning if you pick that pick. You pick it, and then it's like literally some fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, you have activated my trap card. Like every time he gets these guys with it, it's so crazy. Like they're just like, oh my god, it's free. I'm getting exactly what I want. It's like, have you never seen this show before? Come on, guys, wake up. This is what he does. He's just dangling a fucking $10 bill on a fucking fishing pole, isn't he? Like, come on, reeling it in. Like, I know. And then you're under the fucking laundry basket. It's on you. He's caught you like a cat.
I mean, it definitely helps that he has people like Caps. Like, I mean, the crazy thing about this team is like the Zach is now a three-way flex for them. That's just not true of any other team. Like, why is it like, why when they pick Zach, you're like, is that Caps? Like, that shouldn't be a thing that you're thinking.
Yes.
So,
all right, you know what? I don't normally do this, but I'll give you one little gem just for you personally, Monty. So I actually do have an interview that I did in the off-season with Dylan Falco that'll come up soon, right? I normally don't tell people this except my patrons. But the reason I'm going to tell you is because this is where you need to know why Mickey X is so insanely valuable. Because you guys don't know this. You know, you all think because of the picks he does, like he's got all these crazy picks. Oh no, there are picks they don't let him do on stage, Monty. And in it, I asked Dylan Falco, what is the craziest Mickey X, like attempted support pick? And Mickey X wanted to run support TF in official games.
Believe that.
This motherfucker, yeah, but you can imagine what your draft is now capable of, Monty. If you have a guy who plays like the Sandra Jarvan, Drax, he's a fucking support player. Like this is mental, isn't it? Like, imagine the possibilities. That must just be so. And Caps as well. You've also got Caps as well, by the way. Just no biggie. Just got Caps too.
I mean, support CF, if you could actually get through laning phase, would probably be fucking amazing.
Yeah, but that's so ridiculous, a laning phase, isn't it? Like, come on. It's his fault, though. Fair play. I'm sick. I can't lie. I'm sick.
Yeah, I don't know. It's look, they changed TF, so now AD-TF is different. Just saying, you know,
the value looks good. Look, when it powers up, it looks fucking sick, doesn't it? Yeah. I
mean, they changed a lot. They changed a lot with TF. If you guys haven't looked at it, I mean, basically all of his abilities scale with like bonus AD or attack speed, you know, crit chance now. So it's pretty crazy, you know, potentially what you could do with it. Even his stack deck, like his third hits now do damage based on bonus AD, I believe.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, you know, usually, you know, in the past, like you had to build Lichbane and AP to deal damage, like a lot of damage to turret, but now you can actually do it, not quite as much, but you can still do a decent amount of damage to turrets even with AD builds. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how people use that. Probably not, I don't think it's good at AD carry. It's still relatively short range. But, you know, top lane, mid lane, pretty decent.
I mean, mate, if you saw in that game Fnatic SK played, like Niski was doing mad damage at the end of that, mate. That's why he almost ended the fucking game. Like he almost fucking base raced the whole game, didn't he?
I mean, to be fair, he probably should have switched to Lichbane and like blue pot for coming into that. But yes, I mean, it was very close in that.
He was melting him, yeah.
It was very close. I mean, kind of hilarious in a way. Like, it never should have really gotten to that point.
It didn't need to. I know.
In that game, I mean, that game was really wild. And we can talk about the SK Fnatic series, but I mean, I didn't think SK even. I was shocked that they got the lead that they got in that third game of the series, and then the way they also threw it away was kind of sad to watch. But I also think that people really didn't understand that the clock was really on that game. I thought the Ornn pick for Fnatic at the end was really fantastic, because if you're trying to play into Ornn with Rumble Rel, Twisted Fate, Draven, and Run Out of Glass. Like, that's a very low range composition. And you can't really stand in the front if there's an Ornn, Vi, and Ashe, threatening CC, or Corki rockets once Corki hits the 3-item power spike. So, I mean, the clock was on this game. Like, basically, TF and Draven are just too low range to be able to fight effectively.
Let me just check where I am in the time frame here. So the clock's on me, and I need to win with it. So I should probably just give up all the dragons then, right? So I should probably still go to the dragon pit. By the way, Monty, that will forever be one of my number one pet peeves of all time, is when you're basically relying on like a dragon flip. You go to the pit, you watch them take it, and then you try to run away and die one by one. Like, I don't know if there's anything like, if I was a coach, I'd just leave the room at that point in time. You know what I mean? Like, I can't teach these players. There's nothing I can do further here. Like, that tilts me so hard when people just watch like elders be taken. Like, what? Like, I want to just pause the game and go, right now, what's the plan? Now that they've taken that dragon, what's the plan now then, genius? Because hasn't that... But I'd rather lose the game fighting for that, mate. I don't get why you give those up. I'll never understand it, mate. I'll never... Here's what I don't get, Monty. Sometimes I wonder if all those years before the dragon meta made people still think like the dragon just gives you money or something, like, because they act like it's not affecting the game. Like, you're already behind. You can't win team fights while you're not taking a fight right now. And now you're giving them buffs. Like, what are we going to do? Like, the game's just getting worse. Like, I'll never get it's always such a weird, because Isma could have had that fucking game, mate. He had to go for it, but he didn't. There's a few times he could have won this game. I swear. It was so close to being won.
I think the thing with SK to remember in this game is that they just can't win a front to back 5v5. Like, they can't do it.
Yeah.
So you have to look for picks. You must look for picks with like Twisted Fate and Draven and Rumble. And, by the time we hit 30 minutes plus, if you're not hard winning that game, then you're going to have a lot of issues actually closing unless somebody makes a positional error. And that's hard because you're dealing with Ezreal and Corki who can reposition, right? Or you're dealing with very strong forms of single target CC like Vi or Ashe ultimates. So
I'll tell you the moment that hurt me though, Monty. This one really did hurt me. It was the moment when the Rel went in and then the Rumble was too late and didn't even put the equalizer on top of the CC'd people. Do you know how much fucking damage that Rumble was doing at that point in time, mate? Like, if he actually landed that, you just win that team fight immediately. Like, that Irrelevant was mad out of control that game. By the way, he just fucking owned Oscarin in this. I think Oscarin's even good, but he got fucking owned in this series. Like, the Irrelevant guy is really good. It's mentally...
Oscarin seemed like he had an off day, like particularly on the Aatrox in the first game, was making some really questionable decisions and also just wasn't flanking a lot of the time. I thought Noah actually had a surprisingly good series by his standards because he wasn't flashing forward. The Senna game was really quite good, I thought. Humanoid continues to be good, by the way.
I mean, he is getting Corki every fucking game, but whatever. It's all good. It's all good.
But here's the thing, Thorin. Nobody else in LEC is playing Corki for some reason. I don't understand why.
I know.
If you look at what happens in LCK when like one mid laner gets Corki and the entire fucking game explodes afterwards, and Humanoid's a very good Corki player.
Yes.
But the fact that nobody else is trying to roll with this champion right now is kind of ridiculous to me. This is definitely a champion that you can kind of usher through the laning phase, and he's incredibly powerful at dragon fights, and then incredibly powerful once you get to 3 items. Like, it becomes so oppressive. Then also you have him just getting like ornaments this game as well. So they upgrade his Eclipse into Zyzigi or whatever the fuck it's called with the ornament. So yeah, I think this is, I think it was just, Fnatic hung in there at the end, but I do think that it was Fnatic's game to lose past a certain point, just because it is so completely difficult if you're not running away with the lead for SK to win. The Ornn pick, I think, was really quite good from Fnatic's side. But at the same time, it doesn't exactly inspire you hope when Oscarinen is having these very, very difficult games. Even his Zac game wasn't good. I mean, he was getting caught out on the flank, and sure, that gave a very important Drake over to Fnatic because they were more concerned, like SK was more concerned with killing him than taking the Drake, but that's not going to happen every single time, and you can't expect teams to just kind of take the bait and ignore the objective. I have to say, like, Fnatic probably is the second best team in Europe just because they have the players to do it.
Yeah.
They have the players to do it.
If BDS beats them, they have a better game plan. We'll see. It'll be an interesting matchup in that sense. Probably doesn't inspire hope. Like the real issue is at the moment with how the rosters all stand, you have to hope Fnatic's the second best. At least they have some players that can do something if they actually like get into a winning position. Here's the difference, Monty. I shit on BDS because I just think fundamentally their style can't work internationally. Fnatic isn't like going to be a top team. They're not going to do some deep run, but they could at least win some upsets. Like they could get the right draft and then some like Humanoid get ahead or fucking Razork make a play.
Sure.
Of course, like they could win a BO1. They could upset someone, I think.
I mean, the thing is that Humanoid has shown that he's a world-class player. And when you have a world-class mid laner, wins are possible, right? Wins are possible. Razork is an extremely good player. BDS just doesn't have the players at the caliber at this point in time yet in order to make us believe that they are capable of doing something on an international stage. I don't even think they're really going to be capable of doing anything in this playoffs. I think really, G2.
I mean, the joke is, Monty, like you said earlier about like the draft of what they do in mid, they don't even play a fucking Corki, and it's a Zay Corki meta. Like, that's how you know they just have like literally like this is the flow chart. Look, you pick these three things, and then from that it goes to this, and then now the top laner pick. You know what I mean? Like, it's so obviously set out, isn't it? Like, it's on their fridge, just in their team house, like a fucking magnet on it. Like, yeah, LEC Spring Finalists 2023. Like, guys, here's the new protocols. Here's all you're playing. Look, here's your 3 champions, bro. Here's your 3 champions.
Yeah.
Here's my analogy. This is a mad analogy, but if you know it, it's a straight fire one. When I was a boy, Monty, so ancient history now, it's the 1980s, we're back on here. So basically, if you've ever seen any movies like Back to the Future or Gremlins or something, it was that world. It was a very antiquated world, except I didn't live in America, right? And what happened was when I was a boy, Monty, there was 2 types. You might know where I'm going if you know the era. There was 2 types of remote control car you can have. And because I'm a boomer, remote control car, still appealing, because at the time, video games about driving, not as good. They used to be kind of shit back in the 80s. So at the time, having remote controls, the shit if you're a kid. There's 2 types. There's, if you're a rich kid, maybe Monty's family would have had this. You have a real remote control car. It's just a small car with a remote. You can drive left, right, up, down. But if you're a little cheapo kid, Monty, you might know this. There's a type of remote control car. Have you ever seen it where there's a button and it can only turn one direction? It can only go right. It's got 2 buttons on the remote control. It can't go all, yeah, it can go right and forwards because like, they just made like a cheapo one where it was like for a little kid and it wasn't as good as you look. Like that's BDS. They can only go right and forwards. So within that paradigm, if you can craft a world in which going right and forwards only is the best, you can win a lot of games. Your problem is anyone in this analogy, rich kids are all the other regions of the world like the LPL and the LCK. They have full control remote controls. They can go left, right, up, down. So you're shit out of luck. Like, and when they figure out you can only go right and forwards, you're definitely fucked at that point in time. So 1, that's already known. Anyone who watched this match in the upper bracket knows it already. And then 2, there's not enough time to change. So you can't, as we say, you can't fundamentally change the players. All you can do. This is why I know the coaching staff's killing it. You can just use the pieces you have. They don't have the best pieces, but it's like using a deck in a trading card game. They're just better at playing the strategy. They just know what they're doing and they play to their strengths. The problem obviously is, does that work? Here's the question. Can Fnatic shut down BDS? That's the obvious question. If they get there, can Fnatic shut them down, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fnatic can win. They when Fnatic has a good game, we saw this in their match versus G2. They played a really compelling game in game 2 versus G2, where they pretty much crushed G2. They can play a clean game of League of Legends, even against the best teams. I think Oscarnin's performance was a big problem in the first game of the series. I think outside of that match was very winnable actually for Fnatic. Especially with the kind of Senna getting into the late game. The longer that game went on, the harder it was going to be for Xayah to actually get in range of Senna or the Hui that they had. They just weren't setting up for team fights right, and Oscarinin was kind of useless and also was dying a lot in lane and found himself in a position where he was quite far behind when it came to gold. I mean, he ended the game like 3,500 gold behind the Cassante. And Relin also just had a monster pop-off performance. So SK played well and they closed the game, even though it was late and I had concerns about some of the scaling. They were able to close it out. So there was the one win, but, you could say SK was going to win this series, and maybe that's an indication of Fnatic perhaps not being so good. But I think just the individual player strength on Fnatic is good. And Oscarinin has had a very good split. Like, I don't want to take away from him the fact that for the best of ones, he was really, really solid.
Oh.
And perhaps this was just a bad day, right? Perhaps it was just a bad day for Oscar. I don't think he was like terrible up against Broken Blade. I think, the Zach, I think, threw them quite a bit, and Broken Blade had some really good Zach games. So is he the weakness of this team in playoffs? Possibly. But I'm not, it took Irrelevant kind of pushing him in order to get there. Like, is Adam going to be able to do the same thing? Perhaps, but I think probably not.
The problem if you're SK Gaming is this is actually the identity they've had the whole split. What they do is they win a game or two against the top team and you go, hey, maybe they're cooking with something here. This actually can look good. Like, when the right comp comes out and when Niski plays the right way and the Isma guy's a level above you expect, Exakit gets a carry champion, Irrelevant on all his picks pretty good. Hey, this team's pretty good actually. And then what happens is every big game, they always lose. They just let you down in all the big games. It's why, unfortunately, this team's another one that's like, if you want to use them as a bellwether, this is why I know LEC's not that great, because they're actually not a world-class team. If you watch them play game to game, they're not a world-class team, SK Gaming, but they can pull out a game in LEC that can beat basically everyone except about two teams. I mean, the joke is they even have beaten at G2, right? I think they beat them in like a BO1 at the beginning of the split. Like, the sad thing is, like, the potential's there, but they're not consistent of. I mean, one reason's a logical one, which is the Isma guy's a rookie. Like, I don't blame him. Yeah. In a lot of big games, I've noticed he looked a bit hesitant, like I say on that one there. He didn't go for the fucking Dragon Steel because you know what? It's his first playoffs ever. Sadly, he's under a lot of pressure. He's playing Fnatic. It's like a massive. So if they can improve in that sense for the next split, maybe they can be better. But I feel like there's a bit of a hard cap on SK. It's the only thing I worry about. They've gotten to a certain level, but they can't break through at the moment for me.
I mean, I think that's what people feel is kind of disappointing about the LEC is that I think the kind of bad feelings around LEC are this. First off, G2 looks like the obvious winners, clearly the best team within the league. Then you have the rather unfortunate performance of veteran players that have gone to other teams. So we're talking about, the old G2 core on Heretics who looked, they really were not good in those recent games. Like, even Wonder and Yanko started to look ropey, despite having been some of the better players, because people were complaining about perks. But I mean, against SK, like, Yanko's had some bad games. Wonder had some bad performances, especially by the time we get to that third game. And it's very
fucking semi-washed in that fucking one. It was bad, wasn't it?
It was terrible. It was terrible. And then, okay, let's go to Mad Lions. They're exciting. And like, I actually think Mad Lions might be able to be very good someday because there's a lot of, with a different mid laner, probably, possibly different AD carry as well. But I think the Merwin, Elyoya, Alvaro core is really solid. And they've been surprisingly good. Like vastly outstripping expectations, and they are new players, so there is reason to have hope there. But for the most part, you see Fnatic. Fnatic has some off games still. It doesn't feel like with Oscarinen in these playoffs, it's a very complete roster. Jun has also had some pretty rough games, I would say, from the support position. Noah looks a little bit more controlled than he did towards the end of last year, not like flashing forward and dying so much, which is also a good sign for them. But it's still hard to get super excited. And then like other veteran players like Hylissang, who's been a fixture, an elite support player for many years, looks terrible. I mean, he looks terrible in some of these Vitality games. Like, he's literally just like not even playing their win conditions.
This might actually be his real worst split, mate. Like, this is really egregious.
Yeah. I mean, he's like trying to team fight while his team is, he's like, here are things he does. He dies while his teammates are backing in mid lane, and he goes forward to clear out vision when he doesn't have any knowledge of where the enemy team is.
In this recent series, they had a fight, might even have been game 3, I forget which one it was. It was the game where basically they were down at the bottom near the river, and what happened was Hylissang just jumps right into the fight. At the same time, right, his top laner hasn't even finished the TP. His mid laner, Vethio, hasn't come down to join yet. His ADC isn't in auto-attack range. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, the problem with that is this. From all the coaches and players I've known who've played with Hylissang, they all say the same thing, which is you can't coach the int out of him. You have to just follow up on his players. And you can tell in this team, they don't, mate. This team, they actually, sadly, it's the wrong mix of players. Because here's another thing I've been thinking about specifically with Hylissang. Remember, in the modern day of League of Legends, we're not supposed to view support even as just like a bot lane. We're supposed to think of like support, mid, and jungle, right? Those are the three that like make plays together and have to be like on the same page. Here's the difference. He just went from having Elyoya Niski as his support, as his jungle mid, to Douglas Vethio. Like, not only is the experience level night and day, but the Douglas guy looks like he's struggling, quite frankly, and Vethio's an incredibly sort of limited mid laner. So I also think you just got that's the area I didn't see before. It's like that pairing with Hylissang doesn't work. Like it just means he goes in, he dies, he looks stupid, and they have to back out. It looks like you're chain feeding. But like you know that thing that Dom used to say where you need like positive inters or whatever. Hylissang used to be that, but if you're not in the right team, it's a negative. You're just an incredibly negative inter. You know.
Look, I would be honest with you, Thorin. I totally agree with your point. Historically, these games in this playoffs, there's not even a way to follow up. Like, I think that's the big problem. Is like, it's not just, oh, he goes in and the rest of his team doesn't follow. It's, to your point, they're not even there.
Yes.
Like, they are literally like, I am backing right now, and he wanders off to clear vision by himself when he doesn't know where the enemy team is and dies. Or the set game where he's diving a tier 2 turret and his team isn't there, or his team is trying to split push. And like, when you're playing, like, to your point, Thorin, when you're playing a composition like they were in game 2 versus Mad Lions, where you need Photon and Vito to be splitting on the sides because we have this Akshan LeBlanc composition, you cannot 5v5. Like, you do not want to 5v5. You want to create picks on the side lanes with Akshan and LeBlanc. And he's just trying to engage team fights while both of those champions are in the side lanes. Like, it is nonsensical what he is doing. He's not playing to the composition. He appears to not know where his teammates are at any given point in time, even when his teammates, I assume in comms, must be telling him where they are and what they're doing.
Awesome.
And like, there's an understanding with the rest of the team that this is what we need to do to win, and he is just not doing that. It's sad because like he is one of the greatest supports of all time in European history. And you know what? It pisses me off, Thorin, that people are trying to rewrite this narrative as if he was always an inter. He was always an inter.
Really? They're trying to make it like he was secretly shit the whole time. That was the logic.
Yeah, that's what I see. It's like, oh, Hilly's inting again. He's like a hyper inter. He's such a dirty inter. I'm like, yes, but like, there's a reason why he was on so many championship rosters, right? You know
what? There's a guy who I can't remember if it's someone they said I could say this or not. So I'll just frame it this way. Someone made a point to me who was a coach of his, and they did say, actually, it might even have been in that fucking interview I did with Mac. I think he said something like, if you ever look, whether you think Hylissang ints or not, haven't you ever noticed how every year they say whoever plays with him is the best ADC in the league? It's the same last year with Kazi. It was the same with Upset when he was on Fnatic. It's the same with Reckless before. Like, it is. He's right. Whoever plays with this guy ends up being called the best ADC. So, like, I agree with you, Monty. The difference is, like Dom's point before, but the whole positive inter aspect of sort of you make shit happen and you find angles and you cause chaos, that can be good. But in this team, it's just inting because they're not following up. They're all watching you do that, and then you just down a kill in the game. Like, there's no upside to it, is it? You don't get anything from it.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't even think there's an opportunity to follow up.
Oh, no.
And I think that's the critical difference with what we're seeing in this playoffs. And by the way, people also forget that Hilly has had periods of times before. Like, he'll go for a split and be absolute dog shit and then go back to being good again. Like, this is not his first rodeo at, like, having a down split. Like, this has absolutely happened before. But yeah, I just don't even think it's possible to play with him right now because he doesn't care where his teammates are on the map. And that's a problem. It's like he doesn't even give them the opportunity to follow up. There is no opportunity. He's just sending it.
I mean, I'll tell you what, everyone said it about Targamas. Why can't Trimby replace Hylissang?
Of course.
Why not? Why can't that be a move? Isn't that a legit move?
Yeah.
Would be good in my opinion.
Yeah, obviously. He'd be a major voice on the team as well. I mean, Trimby would be an upgrade over almost anybody, clearly. Speaking of upgrades, Finn is supposed to be joining Rogue for spring. I really don't think this moves the needle very much.
Here's my joke for you. So if you think about it, guys, let's just rewind. You had Finn in like 2019 as your top laner, then what you did is through a circuitous set of moves, you traded him and got Odoamne. Then you won the championship. You traded him and got Shigenda, who was a top prospect from the RLs. Now you've managed years later to trade back to Finn so that you can maybe be not 9th place. Here's my joke. In the end, every fly roster ends up Roccat, or in this case, Rogue Cat. There you go, whatever. Not my best work. Listen, it's not my best work. Look, this is a filler episode. I'm coming with what I've got. You know, what do you want? But much like Rogue, Monty, beggars can't be choosers. You have to take whatever I offer you, any old shite, and just make it work. So, yes, you know what? Sadly, actually, the Finn one's an interesting move. I don't really understand it is the only problem, Monty. There's plenty of teams I do think could have used a top laner like Finn. But she get this actually all right, pretty decent top lane. I don't get why he's sort of the one who gets the blame in this roster. Like, didn't you essentially sacrifice Odoamne to have his upside? But now you want Finn instead, who sort of is a known quantity and doesn't have the potential. I don't get it. Like, Finn's all right, but I would have sent him obviously to a team like a Carmine Corp is the sort I'm thinking of, obviously, you know.
I think Finn is a better team player when it comes to the mid and late game than Shigenda is. And he also has his own quirks. Like, he has a kind of weird champion pool that you can play around with, and like the Gled comes out from time to time, and it's fun, and you can do interesting things with that.
But has he ever gone between two towers and pixel walked so that the tower shot didn't hit him on cannon? Has he ever done that? Cool.
That's my
that is the problem with your career, mate. As long as those are the two most iconic moments in your career, then you didn't have that great career, did you? You don't have an in-game moment. Your two signature moments are flipping off the camera and doing a fucking thing on Kennen like that. You gotta have more than that. Come on, what's number 3? Come on, bro.
So I think it's a nominal upgrade, but this is also an admission that the theory about Shigenda having a higher ceiling than Odoamne like didn't work, right? And so now we're kind of rolling back the clock to where we were with Finn, and it's hard to think that this is going to be the upgrade that propels Rogue to greatness, if you know what I mean. Like, is this the change that gets them into the next gear? It doesn't really feel that exciting.
You know, I'll give you a morsel, but I'll be very careful how I say it. Let's just say someone who knows about Rogue, I told them before this season, no matter what you think, this lineup is fucking whack and it is going nowhere. And they were sort of like, oh, I don't know, you know, X, Y, and Z, maybe something. All you need to know is this. They've already contacted me and admitted defeat, and that was right. So they gave that on their own. Like, that's all you need to know is they know internally it wasn't great, guys. That's why in that sense, I'm not surprised there is a roster move, because at that point, this is one thing people probably don't get about like sports if you haven't watched them enough. Sometimes when things are going really badly, you do just make almost any move. Because the idea is you're just trying to shake something up. You're trying to give a reason, even if it's just psychological, for like, it's because we've got this new guy, this new flesh blood, and and we're now more pumped. Any reason you can to psychologically turn it around, you do. So if this is their way of trying to make a demarcation, and next split's going to be better. By the way, it's not like it's impossible they can be decent. Like, look how bad the LEC is. Like, mate, they do still have Larson and fucking Comp. Like, these are quality players. Even the Zoli's guy looked like he had some mechanics. Like, it's not like it's impossible they could be in the middle of the pack mixing it up. It's just... Obviously, like, it's not like you say, it's the same thing as with the Mad Lions one, Monty. If I see Rogue, my brain still tells me this should be a contender, but it's so far from a contender. Like, you'd have to do a bunch more roster moves just to get there now, probably 2 more pieces. Like, you're just so far from contending. It's sad. You were right there a couple of years ago. I'll still never, ever understand that one, Monty. Think about the way it ended with that roster. They won the LEC, dominating fucking G2 3-0 in the final, went to Worlds, beat DRX, who then won Worlds, beat Top Esports, who was a favourite, got out, went into the round of 8. Yes, lost to JDG, who was a solid team. The only Western team to make top 8, and you never even played another game with that. Like, that is... It's like, that's like my favorite saying of all time, you know, is from the movie Blade. Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill. That is fucking Rogue for you. Exactly. Why have you done that? Well, at least play one more split, for fuck's sake. What an insane blue balls that is as well. They finally won and everything. They've just won.
There must have been internal team drama. Like, that's the only reason why you don't run that run that
claimed
back.
to me by people who know them that their philosophy really is that old G2 one, which even G2 now doesn't do, of like you have to change your player every year, otherwise people sort of like get complacent or something. And the joke is like, well, yeah, but in your case, they're not complacent. They're just shit now, aren't they? So yeah, be careful what you wish for, I guess. So whatever. There also was like you have to understand, like people like Trimby and Odoam, they're always going to have some friction with some people. There's a little bit going on there, you know. Trimby never shuts the fuck up, as people see on voice comms. Odoam there's just a bit harsher. So, but all I'll say is, you'd still take all those problems and the winning roster over this fucking mess they've got now, mate. Like, what if you heard this team all sits around singing "Kumbaya" and they're all fucking wash each other's feet like Jesus? Doesn't matter, they're fucking ninth place, aren't they? Exactly.
Well,
all I'm going to say is, who did Jesus actually hang around with? Prostitutes and tax collectors. So, you know, be like Jesus in your personal life, not in your professional life, obviously. Get some quality players in there, you know. There's a lot more I could have done with that metaphor, but I'll leave it there. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Jesus was trying to redeem, you know, the people in sin. That's really not a professional sports team's job.
You've explained it. That's what Fly's trying to do. He's already saved Odoamne and Trimby and all these players, so he's let them go.
Ascended.
They've been freed from hell, like Jesus when he went through hell. Now what he has to do is redeem the most truly irredeemable souls, like, you know, Shigenda, Finn. These people will be damned for eternity. Yeah, that's over for them. Meanwhile, for Shigenda, ironically, he does now go to purgatory, Monty, because he's shown he's too good for the ERL level, but he's repeatedly been bumped down from the so he's in that nightmare, isn't he? He's in that one where you don't know, do I go to a top ERL team, do I be on the worst fucking LEC team? You're in the bad spot, mate. That is the nightmare fuel. Welcome to purgatory. Enjoy your stay. It's only going to be eternity, so don't worry about it.
Any final thoughts on the LEC? I mean, it just seems inevitable that G2 just slams. Like, how do we not get a Fnatic G2 final with G2 winning 3-1? Like, how does that not happen? That's my real question.
My final thoughts are, in light of how the split went for Upset and Perks, I think we all just agree, like a bad night out where, you know, you had all friction between your friends, you all just agree to let bygones be back. Let's forget about last night. Let's move on. The past is in the past. The future is an undiscovered vista of possibilities. And then basically, I'm going to double down that Perks and Upset are coming back next split, better than ever. God. The first one was just a warm up. Listen, things go wrong, but they're gonna be back. You'll see. They'll be back.
Perks is just cold in the winter, right? He needs to warm up in the springs. No, I guess we can talk about Mad Lions a little bit.
There is a level at which, Monty, this is the difference. I actually do hold out still all the same hope for Upset. His skills are still there. I think his lineup was just a very bad one. And they obviously, they're also probably going to be better next split anyway. They've just had a bunch of games to see what's wrong. Here's the problem, though. The Perks one is killing me, though, Monty. Like, at this point in time, I do low-key need to take Perks on a little, you know, field trip into the countryside. And then as I'm like showing, oh, look, hey, Perks, look at the river here. He's like, oh, yeah. Oh, Thorin, will there be the G2 2019 rabbits there too, Thorin? Yeah, Perks, yeah, sure. Tell you what, kneel down a second, mate. I just need to put that MSI medal around you. Really? And will it be like when I put on it? Yeah, just like that, Perks. Sure thing, Mitch. End of the movie. Basically, if you've never seen Off Mice and Men, that's basically what I'm talking about. It's a sad state of affairs. I don't want to have to do it, Monty, but it's getting dark at this point, isn't it? He's starting to hurt himself and other people, Monty. I think at this point in time, after that Poppy died, we're just going to put him down, haven't we? Like, that was his mid-lane laning phase this year. See, it's getting dark. I've got to be the one responsible. I know, it's not bad.
That was one of your better references, by the way. It's a mercy killing, right? It's a mercy.
Exactly. It's good for everyone at this point in time. This is just better for everyone, isn't it? I know. Because it's getting dark, isn't it? Like, how much further can we go with this? How much further can we go?
It is depressing watching them. But I'm just surprised because Jankos was so good for all of last year, and to watch even his performance deteriorate, you know, I really hope that this roster can be redeemed because we know what the ceiling is. Not to say that these players have been near the ceiling in a long time. Like Wonder was taking a break. Jankos actually was looking super good. But yeah, it does feel kind of over for Heretics. I hope I'm wrong, but I think I've kind of lost my hope for them turning it around for the rest of this year with this iteration of the roster. And, you know, if they replace Perks,
Peter
the ceiling won't be there.
Some magic, mate. He better just be in the lab figuring out all sorts of shit. Exactly.
I mean, I think the issue with Peter is that he's often been better with rookie players rather than super
That's
veteran
actually his
players.
biggest problem if you think about it. If he had rookies like that example I gave about Isma and SK, you can believe things can change on their own. It's inexperience. What do you say when the players that fail are wonders, Yankos and Perks? Like, what do you even tell them essentially? Like, do you have a time machine? No, well, shall we lock that out? We like, what are we going to do? Like, yeah, there's nothing. What can you fix? Like, because here's the problem. The saddest thing about Heretics, here's the last thing I'll say on NEC is this. Is if you watch the mistakes those players are making, Monty, I know those aren't ones that consciously they would make that decision. If I sat them in a VOD review, they'd tell me exactly what's going on. But in the game, they're making like bad mistakes. Like they don't look, you take the nameplates off, you wouldn't know is a Mad Lions player the rookie or is it a fucking Team Heretics player? It's really alarming, like some of the shit players they're making. Like the amount of times that they be behind in the game and then just don't even get back. Like we said on a past episode, they don't even make the ballsy play to flip the game. They just lose like sort of ungracefully. It's mental, isn't it? It's so weird.
Their games have not been a pleasure to watch. That's for sure. Mad Lions,
coach, they're done. It's over. It's over for them.
We need a Peter Dunn meme that instead of it's Jover, it's just it's done. That's what we need.
Could be done. There you go. Could be something like that. The triple done. Well done. They're well done.
Well done.
So there's a lot we can do with that. Okay.
They're cooked. Well done. Mad Lions, Corey, you want to say anything about Mad Lions real quick? They've exceeded expectations. I've liked some of their drafts. El Yoya is great. Like, I think the best thing for me about Mad Lions is that they have Alvaro and Merwin alongside El Yoya, and El Yoya controls the pace of the game. El Yoya is the tip of the spear. Anywhere he is where the action happens. The other players just follow exactly his calls in the game. So he's going to be there. That's where you're going to all in. Everybody else just sit back, weak side when El Yoyo's not there, follow him. And it has been very, very effective to see their early games in this capacity. It's been fun to watch.
Basically, I agree. I actually think the team's been way better than I expected. So first of all, another team, I have to assume the coaching staff must have killed it. Like, just looks like it. They've managed to make El Yoya completely integrated. And then, the top laner and the support are just legit players. The Merwin guy is interesting. The Alvaro guy's just really good. I actually think he has like a real future here. Obviously, when it comes to the player Super, I will say that for that players, I'm also going to appeal to my new totally fake Portuguese viewers and say, shouldn't be more like Chupa. Because you're a sucker if you think he's the best. So it was a deep cut in all the languages. Exactly. Don't worry me. If people don't know, when I was a boy, I liked chupa chups too. I just didn't know. Like, no one in England knows that means like soccer or whatever, right? But I now know it does much because you can imagine the Brazilian fans might have said chupa to me 1 billion fucking times. So yes, I get it. I'm more than aware of it. Don't worry.
Suba makes some interesting mistakes and like is too aggressive, and Friscovi is put in good situations. I think credit also, I mean, we were skeptical about the coaching change away from Mac into but honestly, like the Talia pick really strong into Vitality and the composition that they were fielding. If the blind pick Akali, Talia is very, very strong in that matchup, both in lane and throughout the rest of the game. And if you're trying to play, a bunch of melee champs and 4 melees effectively into Talia, and a bunch of these champions need to dash in order to engage, like Gwen or Rel, you're going to have a bad time. So the drafts have been good. They've been very playable. I like what we've seen from them. And El Yoya's been really good. I think El Yoya's been absolutely one of the top junglers in the LEC this split. And the team dynamic just seems to be working because we don't have, it appears to be a lot of egos. They are literally just listening to El Yoya, who's the veteran player now, make the calls, control the early game, and that is doing a lot of work for them.
No, like I say again, it has to just be what a great job by the coaching staff. I don't know their coaching staff personally. Obviously, I didn't follow Movistar Riders, but there's another person I'll probably try and bring on a show. Like the Melzik guy seems like he's killed it, mate.
Yeah.
Clearly knows his players. Respect.
Knows his players, knows how, what to expect from them, has intelligent drafts where he gets the most out of them. Like, I'm not sold probably long-term on Frescovi or Supa, but the rest of the team, I think, can really be molded into something. Switch it up to some LCS.
Here's the thing, though, Monty. I'll just do this just to really ruin everyone's day. Obviously, I don't think this will happen, and I certainly hope it will not happen. But technically, every team still left in the playoffs can not only reach, but win the LEC. So what would you do if it was G2 against Mad Lions in the final? Can you even imagine? Dude, there's a world. I actually do think on both levels, Fnatic should be able to basically outpunch Mad Lions, and BDS should be just a better team. But there's a universe where if a crazy upset happens, what if Mad Lions is in the final? What do we even do then? What do we even do then?
I mean, they would have to beat. They would have to beat Fnatic first, which is the issue. Like, I could potentially see the upset against BDS, but it feels really difficult for them to take out Fnatic.
Because you know what? Here's what I've realized, guys. I've realized the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So as long as I think BDS and Fnatic are overrated, I need to ride with Mad Lions. I need Mad Lions to just ruin the whole LEC. Essentially, Mad Lions for me is like when the Joker just burned the other half of the money in like the Dark Knight of the criminal's money. It's like, yeah, I've set your half on fire. My half's the other half. You're like, give me a break. There's a world that you can't. It's not impossible. Because I've picked against them every series, mate. So they're better every time than I think they're going to be. So I have to allow for the possibility. You know, the Fnatic can come in. BDS maybe just shit the bed on draft. Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, I actually think Mad Lions is a pretty good team. Like, I think they're. Let me spin this conversation into LCS. There's a lot of topics that people are discussing about LCS versus LEC.
Are you going to do an LS now and tell me that like Mad Lions will be like second in LCS or something? Come on, hit me with it. What's the take?
Yeah. I do believe that.
They'll be top
I do
two.
think they're better than most of the LCS teams right now. People are excited about LCS because of parity, but if you actually sit down and watch some of these games, so first off, the only reason there's parity is because Cloud9 has absolutely shit the bed with the team that should be dominating this region. True. And, you know, are we going to have some sort of argument that, like, people like to say that everybody's beating everybody, which is why it's exciting, and that's true. And I personally believe that this split of LCS has been pretty entertaining, like legitimately. But if we're going to try and pretend that the quality of play in the region, like Europe is so much worse than LCS, that's just not true. Like, I was watching both of the 100 Thieves games from this past week on stream. These were games where 100 Thieves won both of them, one versus Team Liquid and one versus Cloud9. And the amount of misplays and throwing from both teams, or like all three teams, so 100 Thieves, Liquid, and Cloud9, these games was egregious. Like, these are not good teams. People like 100 Thieves because Sniper is an exciting player. And that's part of what makes the LCS compelling right now. Is Sniper is a very fun player to watch. And I do think actually has incredibly high upside. So I'm not trying to shit on him. Quid has had some very good games as well.
Way better now. By the way, now I get why people in Europe, if you don't know, Quid actually was a guy hyped with some of the EU teams. I think maybe like XL or someone was going to sign him. Like, I know there was a bunch of teams actually were looking at this guy Quid. I can see why though. He looked ass last year, but he looks way better this split. Way better.
Yeah. Now, maybe part of that is because he's getting a bunch of Taliyah picks, and like Taliyah's really strong right now and has been buffed, and people are playing compositions into Taliyah that maybe we just shouldn't be playing. Like, you guys, you can't play a bunch of low range champions into Taliyah. Like, you can't do that and like win a game of League of Legends. You know, good luck trying to engage on her. Good luck hopping around this Callista right in front of her. It's very difficult. And she, you know, the Q was buffed now. She's now a flex pick as well. So, I mean, she always was a flex pick, but now even more so a potential jungle option. Like, I assume we're going to see that when LCK starts to come back onto the Taliyah buff patch. So it's been good drafting, I think, by 100 Thieves. But I gotta say, guys, if you think that these are clean games of League of Legends and that somehow this means that Europe is worse, like, Mad Lions is a much better team than most of the teams that are in LCS right now. Perhaps all, like, honestly, perhaps all of the teams. Like, maybe not FlyQuest, but outside of that, big mistakes. 100 Thieves, their bot lane is garbage, guys. Like, Ayla is not a good player of the game League of Legends. He constantly makes mechanical mistakes. He isn't in the right position a lot of the time. He literally is like engaging fights with Alistar before waiting for his ult to come out. He's like flanking on Alistar and getting chunked out by an Orianna in the game against Liquid before his ult can come up. He is going into the backline when it's not possible for anybody to follow up on him. It's just very bizarre play. And Quid, River, and Sniper, the top side's very exciting. The bottom side is not good.
Well, here's what's funny, Monty. I've got the analogy for you. You know, my analogy in Europe is that BDS's success shows how bad the other teams are fundamentally on like a basic level of coaching and team strategy and understanding the way the game's played. The team that does that in LCS is fucking Team Liquid. There's another team that has no business. Like, you better hope this isn't like the fucking second team for MSI, guys. It's not going to be good because this team would never win any games. But against LCS, they actually, just by doing like real macro, just fucking win the game. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's mad, isn't it? Isn't it mad?
And Team Liquid has had some strength in macro. I mean, I thought they completely dominated the game against Cloud9 in a great, like, they played an excellent macro game, just objectively fucking great macro game against Cloud9. They got C9 got completely rolled because of the macro. So not taking away from Liquid's macro, the problem is like for every strength of what we talk about with the LCS teams, the other side of that is really glaring flaws, guys.
Yes.
Like APA and Yun are your carries on Team Liquid. Core JJ has not been good. The reason why, Liquid is losing the match to 100 Thieves is because like they use a bunch of critical ultimates that they need to team fight, particularly the Taric ult, which then allows 100 Thieves to engage because Team Liquid is hanging around waiting for that engage afterwards. It was crazy because I watched both 100 Thieves games back to back this week on my stream. Okay. And I was literally like, I am watching the same game again when I watched 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid, then 100 Thieves versus Cloud9, because I literally watched Cloud9 and Team Liquid having significant advantages compositionally in terms of game state, everything like that. Then what happens is both Team Liquid and Cloud9 use key ultimates in stupid ways and then engage a team fight anyway in the mid lane without those ultimates and then lose the game off of that in the late game. Both games. It's crazy. Like Cloud9 in their game, they just toss out, a Sejuani ult, which is their primary form of engage, and then they just decide to go in anyway. And it's like, well, you actually just don't have the tools that you need in order to team fight any longer. If you don't have Bard ult and you don't have Sejuani ult, you cannot go in. If you're Team Liquid and you don't have Taric ult anymore, well, 100 Thieves all of a sudden has access to your backline and you can't kite this out and then you lose. So why are we using these ults pointlessly and then going in? You know what I mean?
Also, I did think to myself, Monty, bearing in mind, APA is already the mid laner you can incredibly cynically ban out. Why are you letting him have the Aryan Sol? He doesn't even have that many good champions. You're literally just giving him his fucking champion. What are you doing? Just ban it. Just don't let him have it.
I mean, like, look, I don't really know, what is going on a lot of the time in the LCS. It's a confusing league. I think that it's more fun. And here's why I think it's more fun. And people may be thinking it's, how can I put this? I think the top 4 teams in the LEC are better than the top 4 teams in the LCS. It's undeniable with G2. I think you can make a pretty strong case that, Fnatic, BDS, and Mad Lions are all, the only team that maybe would be in that conversation is FlyQuest at the current point in time.
Sure.
The issue is that the bottom of the LCS is significantly more competitive than the bottom of the LEC. And I think that's the difference, right? Is that there's less of a difference between the top and the bottom of the league than there is in LEC. But the top is just, it looks to me like it's a lot higher in LEC right now. Just significantly cleaner plays, players doing, like, knowing what jobs they're supposed to do, not just willy-nilly going in when you blow key cooldowns that affect the way that your team compositions interact with each other, and it's, deeply unwise. But 100 Thieves basically caught 2 big throws in almost exact same fashion from Cloud9 and Team Liquid. And people are overlooking, like, the very glaring weakness of that bot lane.
We need to ask. Here's the thing: we need to actually do like an intervention on this Cloud9 line at Monty, because this is actually on paper a fucking super team. Every player can be all LCS level in theory, and no joke, you should actually have straight up like 3 players just competing with each other for the MVP. Like in a sane world, Cloud9 would be top, win almost every game. Like I say, it would basically be Blabber, fucking Jojo, and Berserker just compete with each other to see who wins the MVP, and then you go to MSI as like triumphant champion. Dude, this is actually going to be, if it continues on, one of the most embarrassing super team failures ever. Like, everyone loved to laugh at, like, the fucking Team Liquid one a few years ago. Dude, that team was still, they were still making the, I'm talking about an LCS, though. They were still making the playoffs. Like, the Team Liquid lineup there used to just fail in playoffs. Like, Cloud9 last year didn't win, but that was only in the playoffs that they failed. You go to FlyQuest, okay, by summer they were shit. Like, in the spring, they still made the play. Like, this is actually really bad. Like, dude, there's a world for real where Cloud9 could finish, like, 4th or 5th at the end of this split. That's mental. That is mental. That should be impossible with this roster. It even still looks good now when you look at it on paper. Like, you look at it now, it should be good to go and be number 1. Look at this roster, mate.
Yeah. The roster is clearly the best on paper roster in the
Bonkers, yeah. It's one of the best ever made in theory. Like, that offseason looked like they just won it straight up, didn't it? They just killed it.
Yeah. I think everybody basically predicted them to be number 1. Because we in FlyQuest's case, you just had to think that Masu, you had to have reasonable expectations for Masu. I think Masu has outstripped all expectations of him. I think this guy is like legitimately really good mechanically. But even then, you look at the games that FlyQuest loses, oftentimes they're losing them because their bot lane is making mistakes in the laning phase. And it's fucking up the game for the rest of the people. If they just strap into Inspired's ride, for the most part, he just carries them over the finish line and they don't have to think, and they can just, Masu could just use his mechanics in order to win the game. But he's a rookie, some mistakes are going to be expected. You couldn't have expected them, I think, you couldn't predict them to be in the number 1 position, because I don't think it was reasonable to expect this performance out of Masu and Busio. And Cloud9 obviously collapsing is shocking and surprising in and of itself, even if they did almost have a 2-0 week this week, and should have had a 2-0 week this week. Like that, the loss to 100 Thieves was really baffling. But yeah, I think if you're actually talking about the strength of the top end of LCS, it is not good right now. There's definitely not a team that we look at and say, this team plays, like, think about BDS, for example, Thorin. There isn't a BDS equivalent that has kind of mid-tier players and plays an extremely, refined style. People will say Team Liquid, but, like, BDS's carries are a lot better. They're a lot better than Liquid's carries. And Liquid having to win off of pure macro is delightful to me because of what I like about League of Legends, but is, I admit, a red flag when it comes to any kind of serious playoff or international performance.
It's basically the angle people just miss about Dom's point about BDS. His point is the reason why he agrees with me that them being near the top of the table implies something quite negative about LEC. Is because actually they are arriving at these like dragon fights and team fights, sometimes behind or in a position where normally the other team should be favored to close out. And then what they do is they win every team fight. Like, they actually turn it around. Well, the problem with that is, 1, you're going to arrive in a way worse position if you ever get there against the international team. And 2, you're not just going to out team fight from behind against like fucking LPL teams. Like, that's just not going to work for you. So yeah, the problem always is you don't want to just have the strength and then not the players. You want to have the players and the strength. Like, the style can't be the entire thing that carries you. It can only get you so far. So in a domestic scene, a style can get you near the top. If you go international, the players have to play the game. You need actual brilliant players to make brilliant players, especially if you're playing against LPL and LCK teams. So you're not going to have a chance to win. There's a reason why, if you look at the teams that can win, like even that aforementioned Rogue team I mentioned, they had players that were very, very good. They had Odoamne at his peak. They had Larson when he was really good. Drimby was like a fucking unique support player. Like, you go down these rosters, if you sent Team Liquid and BDS to MSI now, they just get murked, mate. They wouldn't even be in these games. It'd be embarrassing. Like, what lane are they winning through, Nothing. Maybe an Adam crazy pick. That's about it. That's about the only one in both teams combined.
I remember we kind of saw how that worked last year at Worlds, didn't we?
And they've got to be used to it by now.
Plans.
Yeah. The other problem is it's not the first time you're meeting him. Now you've met him a few times. You've seen this before. You've scrimmed him even. Like, you know, he's an own quantity. You wanted that when it was like a bad outside like Darien that you don't even know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
It's all good because the LCS viewership's up 4%. So the best part is like 4% even sounds like some sort. What I love is we've already entered the phase where he could just be talking on like breakfast news about like, the economy. Like, well, it's not a recession because look, like job percentages are up 4% if we just include all economics. You know, like when they just do all that shit, just fuck with numbers 24/7. Like we've entered that phase already. We're supposed to just look up while Mark Z's talking on TV from the newspaper and go, huh, up 4%, eh? Oh, jolly good. And then just go back to fucking, there's a cake show tomorrow. Interesting. Give me a fucking break. Give me a break.
Also, I mean, if viewership is up 4% and you're giving credit to the parity of the league and the excitement of like all of these new rookies, which are potentially, you know, drawing, you know, a bunch of old veterans coming back, some rookies that Sniper like and Masu who are looking potentially better than we thought they would, and maybe drawing some more eyeballs. Like, what happens when this league is not so even when it comes to competition, right? If the theory is that the competitive nature of the league and the evenness of the league is helping out in viewership, then what happens when it goes back to being very top heavy, as most of the League of Legends leagues have been in the past?
The only way that news would have been better for Mark Z if they were like, and we've made this feature package about our exciting new viewers, and it's all just people speaking in Portuguese. Like LCS is we bueno. It's Gabriel, long-time viewer of the LCS, big on the Thieves fan. You know?
He says, Caralho.
And that, in fact, was a popular tweet. We got a lot of Caralho tweets over the weekend. So send them
many
into
Caralhos. I noticed they haven't put any Caralho tweets onto the LCS, which, by the way, you know, every time I'm VOD reviewing these LCS games, I have to go through like 10 tweets in a row that cover the entire item box. You know what I mean? Sure. So like, I'm like, please, at the start of the game, I'm like, please, yes. Can I please see the UI so I know what's happening in this fucking game? Right. You will not give me replays. So I actually have to see what's going on right now. But instead, I'm seeing
a tweet where it's like, influencer says 100T LFG exclamation mark. They're like, oh, big news coming in for the. It's just nonsense. It's completely worthless tweets, and it covering actual information.
I hate it so much.
So insane. I know, it's so bonkers. Because I also wonder this: why does the box have to be that big? Make it like a little ticker, like ESPN, you know, on the top. Like, why does it have to cover the whole thing? Like a giant tweet. It's mental in it. It's so bad. What a world. And always, by the way, the tweets always look so astroturfed, like some mad 1984 Orwellian, like, LCS is double plus good. Me and my friends are all watching this weekend at Mark Z. Like, what are you talking about? It's just always the most bullshit blowing smoke up your ass tweet as well. I know, it's so fucking bullshit.
So the worst one, I was watching the 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid match, Thorin, and somebody was like, yeah, it's Pokemon versus Naruto, 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid, because those are the anime shows that they've done like merch collaborations with. And I was like, please, okay. I just want to watch esports, please. I really just don't want to look at the Pokemon versus Naruto fucking tweets in the whole box while I can't see the UI.
Those aren't even like modern day. That's like some really old school anime.
That's what I said.
Well. Like, dude, that's
dated. Look, I know Pokemon is still popular, but like that is the most boomer anime shit to tweet.
What next? Hey guys, we want to hear your voices. Which is better, Pokemon or Digimon? It's like that reference is about 25 years old. What are you talking about, you lunatic? It's so old at this point in time. Probably more than that.
But Thorin, those are the partnerships that 100 Thieves and Team Liquid got for their merchandise. So that's why they said it. But I love how they're like, you know what? We're going to include social media and we're going to appeal to those kids. Gen Z loves checks notes, Naruto and Pokemon. I'm like, no, that's millennial shit, man. Dude, that's from my generation.
I know, it's so bad. And by the way, I pointed out in the past, but I will never ever. Really, this is what's mad, is it shows how when the right emotions get activated, it can make you forget bad things that happened in life. It's sort of proof you can get past trauma. Because what's sad is I now have, because she's not around causing trouble anymore, I actually have really positive memories of Froscurrian. Because I always remember that one I told you where I saw her doing that stream of Pokemon United. And she was raging like she was in a solo queue game in League. But when it's Pokemon, it's just so much funnier. Like, it would just be her, like, raging her ass off, like, this fucking Bulbasaur, is he ever going to join the group or what? Is he just sidelining? And it's like, somehow the Pokemon name being involved just makes it like 1,000 times funnier. Like, I was crying laughing with that. It was too good. It was too good, mate. It's too good.
I just, is that maybe there is evidence that these tweets like somehow get people to watch the show more.
Doesn't seem like it, but yeah.
I find it hard to believe, but it's like, I don't understand why we keep arriving at this conclusion, because it happens in esports from time to time. Some people are like, you know what, we should include more social media interaction. And then you just get a bunch of dumbass tweets in your broadcast. Everybody's like, this fucking sucks. Put it away. No, we don't like this. Then it goes away for a while. And somebody else is like, but what if we put tweets in our broadcast? Why does this happen over and over and over again?
The obvious thing that tilts me the most about this, right? Obviously, as we're implying, you and I would not, in fact, put tweets onto a broadcast. But if someone said to me, Monty, that you have to, they're not even doing it well. Because you know what pisses me off? They are just like, let's fucking go Cloud9, C9 fam in the, C9 win. Like, it's never actually like, oh, fucking some expert like Peter Dunn's watching the game. Like, I would have drafted a different one on like R2. Like, it's never actually like interesting shit that we read Twitter for to see like during the match. Like, if you actually put those tweets up, maybe that'd be interesting. Maybe someone makes a shrewd point about the comp, or maybe someone says something like, hey guys, watch out in solo queue, the top lane has been put. They never put that tweet up, I noticed. It's never actual analysis. It's just some generic like, yay, isn't LCS great, guys? It's like some fucking brainwashing. Essentially, as far as I can tell, the purpose of that tweet, Monty, is like those experiments where, the ones where a real person goes into a room, a doctor's office, and everyone in there's an actor, and then they all do weird shit, and eventually the normal person goes along with it, and it just shows how social conditioning works. Like, that's what I feel like these tweets are supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to see that and go, wait, actually, I'm having a great time watching the LC. Let's fucking go. Except because it's right, I can't even say let's fucking go. You have to say LFG. Like, just pretend that means stuff. LFG. Give me a break.
Dude, I remember the last time this happened. You know what's funny is it's not even, when I say it's like cyclical, it's not even cyclical like between different esports tournament organizers or production teams. It's literally cyclical within LCS. I remember they were doing this during the pandemic where they were like, well, we don't have an audience, so what if we just put a bunch of tweets on screen? And like, it was literally just wrong analysis a lot of the time. Like, it was fans who had really bad analytic points that were very distracting from the actual analysis of the game. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Hold on, I'm going to switch our server really quick to refresh your camera, Thorin. There we go.
Is it back?
You're back. All right. I don't know what else there is really to say about LCS at the current point in time. We're going on a 2-week break. Everything seems to be up in the air. FlyQuest appears to be the best team. I think everybody else has serious issues. I am hoping that this 2-week break, Thorin, will actually cause these teams to improve. That's my hope. It's been fun to watch it, but it's not going to be fun to watch.
I've got a darker joke to end the LCS segment on, which is, this is where, low-key, part of me actually wishes I did live in LA. Because what I'd love to do is go through Culver City, where those big highway bridges go over the roads that go under. And now when I'm walking past that homeless encampment, I want to see a big tent with a red fist on it and a bunch of guys, and they're like, hey, Thorin, is that you? Hey, remember me from season 3? Remember that card I gave you with the free RP? I'd be like, listen, you homeless, get the fuck away from me. Make a mistake. Like, and then I'll walk past their tent because obviously they'd all be out there now, won't they? Mate, that's so mad. Like, because the maddest thing about that detail is, you know, the story originally went from like, there's probably not that many esports people. And then some of the names were actually like big names. They were like real old school people from like that. These were the people, the joke is, who actually were like part of building out League in the old days, like 10 plus years ago. It was wild, wasn't it? I couldn't believe some of the names I actually saw gone there. It's fucking mad.
Well, you know, it's funny, Thorin.
And didn't you have a post that showed like LEC was just trying to hire like some cheap person, like for literally one of those jobs?
So that's a fun one. So Gravity Media is Riot's production partner. And so Riot basically had this plan, and they're like, we're going to create 3 broadcast centers that are all 8 hours apart. So there's one in Seattle, by the way. And as I understand, there weren't a lot of people up in Seattle, but the Seattle one got hit super hard as well. Then there was the one in Dublin, which is Striker, which is the most complete one. And I think there's supposed to be one in Asia, I believe in Shanghai as well. So the idea is that they have these 3 broadcast hubs that are each 8 hours apart, so they can kind of cover worldwide broadcasts from central locations. And their partner in this is a company called Gravity Media. Now, Gravity Media is a huge, huge production company. And they have a bunch of full-time people that then they assign to work on Riot broadcasts. So it's a way for Riot to, you know, have a partnership that doesn't chain them to a bunch of full-time employees. So Gravity Media, a bunch of the people who work in Dublin work for Gravity Media.
Right.
Gravity Media has also been hiring in Seattle for Riot. And very curiously, there are 2 broadcast engineer positions open, one in Seattle and now one in Berlin. The one in Seattle says, Thorin, it is specifically for Riot Games. The one in Berlin says that it is a full-time job for a client that is working in esports, okay? And so remember that they just fired a bunch of engineers, broadcast engineers, from LEC. Then they had to bring in people from Dublin in order to fulfill those positions temporarily, because otherwise the broadcast was fucked, which is the only reason that it didn't look terrible right after those firings. And now Gravity Media is going to hire a full-time broadcast engineer to be loaned to the LEC. And so they have basically just completely back-channeled that, probably for less money, obviously.
Of course, almost certainly, yeah.
Is it foul play under German law? I don't know. I do find it very suspicious that for literally the same job title, broadcast engineer, they say in Seattle it's working for Riot. In Berlin, they keep the client's name blank. That is suspicious to me as to why they would do it that way. So it does make me wonder if they're trying to like skirt it. They probably can't hire the people they just laid off to do this job because that would almost certainly be in violation of German law. Yeah. But maybe if they hire a different person because technically they're working for Gravity Media, that the shenanigans, wouldn't be noticed by the German government. I will say there's another funny anecdote. I will tell you, Thorin. So I was chatting with some people, and there was an internal town hall at Riot about the layoffs, of course. And one of the questions that was asked is, are the executives in the esports division taking any kind of pay cuts?
Yeah, totally reasonable question. Yeah.
Do you know what the answer was, Thorin?
I'm going to guess no. Probably getting a raise. If they get a raise by any chance. Come on,
well, there's so much more money now that they created layoffs. No, because the reason they gave was that because executive compensation is highly dependent on bonuses, and because the company is not doing well, they would not be receiving bonuses. Ergo, they would be receiving a pay cut from their compensation package.
The disingenuous way of explaining it ever. Yes, I agree. Indeed.
Also, there isn't any clarity on how bonuses are calculated, obviously, right? And they're not revealing what those bonus packages look like.
On wasn't it like every 1,000 souls you get for Satan, then you get like oh shit, I'm thinking of hell. My bad. I was totally on the wrong track there. My bad.
So there's no way for.
And I'll put a bow on that thing earlier, because the one part I fucked up on the example from LA earlier is, you know those videos you get in the modern day, you often see them on Twitter, where it'll be someone riding around like some area like that in LA, or famously like in San Francisco. And you know those areas where they have like massive drug abuse problems? Like you'll see people really at these like encampments, like just stood there sort of like as if they're in like a fucking alternate dimension, like they look like they're in a K-hole, like, you know, they just stood there doing like this. Imagine that, but the guy's wearing a Timo hat. That's all I'm saying. That's how it'll be now. Imagine you just see that Timo hat. Are you okay, man? I used to work on Garen Balance. He's gone, man. He's gone. It's over. It's Chinatown, Marty. It's Chinatown.
I mean, with the way these people have been acting about these layoffs, you wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of trauma. They're acting like being laid off from Riot is the single worst thing that could possibly happen to a human being.
Well, but yeah. Some would say when you have sold out all your soul, your integrity, your friends, your entire industry to China and Saudi Arabia, that, yeah, when you then get fired, like cynically by those people, you might feel like you got nothing left in some ways, you know. It's kind of a shit deal, some would say. So, yeah.
But I did think it was hilarious that the answer would be like, from the executives, well, we're not cutting the compensation, but maybe we don't get as big bonuses. But also, you don't technically know that our bonuses aren't tied to reducing headcount and therefore freeing up money in the budget. So we're not going to tell you what those bonuses were. It's outrageous. By the way, I'm just going to put this out there for you guys. You know, executive bonuses are great and all, but people don't really, if you're not a complete moron, you don't budget your life around the bonuses that you may or may not receive. So base compensation has to be extremely high as it is. So them not taking pay cuts is basically saying that they're not going to have whipped cream on the ice cream sundae that they're eating. It doesn't fucking really matter. Like, oh, well, we're going to eat this banana split, but no whipped cream and no maraschino cherry on top, guys. We're doing this for you. We're not taking the bonus whipped cream, but we're still going to eat this whole banana split. Well, you don't get any ice cream at all. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. There has to be a baseline of pay that is like probably mid six figures at least for a lot of these people.
Oh, easily. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And like, woe is you if you don't get a few extra 100K in bonuses. Like you're not anticipating, if you're not a complete moron financially, you're not anticipating that you're getting that money.
There's one thing I will say that I do actually agree, and this isn't just because a certain person implied we never do this, but I will say the number one problem of the esports industry, without a doubt, can be framed this way, is that companies, which if you look at the actual like financial layout and structuring of their company and what they need to succeed in and how likely it is in terms of making a profit, are by definition startups did pay themselves at the top level, like Riot and every other esport, did pay themselves money as if they already were running like Amazon, except obviously not scaled to a lower level. Like essentially they want to be a startup and get all the VC money, but then also pay themselves the mega buck salary for being the top executive. And so they already ran like a really profitable company that had like a massive revenue cash flow. And like, even if you're not profitable, like you will be anytime you want to be. That is the most inappropriate thing about the esports industry. Because essentially the question people should ask isn't this, Monty, where's the success? The question you ask is this: where did the money go? Now, look, a lot of it did go into player pockets for the salaries. That's true. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, a healthy amount went into the pockets of the people who run the esports teams, who run the esports TOs, who run the game developers. Like, of course it did. So I'm with you. If you want to talk about Riot Games, the part of the company that developed the game, that is a company that made loads of profit. They should get massive salaries. If you're on the esports side, I'm sorry, this doesn't make money yet. You should actually probably be on like what a startup guy would be like, you know, like 80K, and you're just hustling like a motherfucker. No. You've just finished half a decade of getting like 250K plus a massive bonus package, like Monty says, when Worlds comes off and viewership goes up and you get a deal for a sponsorship. Like, that is the maddest thing of all, is like it's the amount of money that was pissed away so that people could sort of laugh that they were a successful businessman or they were killing the game, you know. Because if people don't know, me and Monty aren't talking out our asses. When we turned down that Saudi money, we have had to literally live as though this is a startup, and we don't take big salaries from the company because it isn't funded yet, so we can't do that. And spoiler, if we did anyway, we'd be doing the same as they do. So it has to make sense as a company to take that sort of money. Yeah.
I mean, you and I have taken a shockingly small amount of money out of this company. In fact, we've
but it
paid
makes sense, though. It's appropriate. Yeah.
Our full-time employees, guys, have been paid more than either me or Thorin. That's just straight up true. And it's fine. Like, that's just the way it has been.
That's what the company is. Yeah, it's appropriate. Yeah. That's where we are. That's the level we should be at. Yeah. The difference is it's like if we did this scenario in the same situation, Monty, the equivalent of what Riot's doing, if we did it, was if we had 200K a year salaries, our staff got almost nothing. We fired them all so we could keep our 200K. And at the end of the year, we still have nothing that we're doing that's making the company go. Like, what would that be? But that's how all the companies in esports run. It's why I often tell people, don't say that, like, insert team name lost this money. No, they lost someone else's money. They paid themselves like $1 million, mate. Reggie is like driving a fucking Lambo. What do you think, mate? Give me a break. Of course he is. Of course he is.
At least Reggie had his website businesses that were actually profitable.
True. Yeah, true.
Yeah, he wasn't just the esports team.
True.
I mean, the real egregious thing is, like, you know, it's companies like Dignitas that don't even have any other form of income, and those executives have been paid a fuck ton of money. Like that is outrageous. Like it's crazy. These, for the most part, a lot of these teams, once the VC came in, because obviously Dignitas is an old team, and OD definitely did run this as, you know, a startup and as a grassroots project. But as soon as they were bought out, like, come on, dude, you think those executives over at CLG that was owned by Madison Square Garden weren't making a bunch of money that didn't make any sense with the revenue of the team? Like, a lot of these esports only teams have been absolute disasters when it comes to just pissing away funds.
Exactly. So enough about people who take in massive venture capital investment and then just fucking pay themselves a huge salary and then just do nothing with the industry. I think people like, in terms of people who take big investment, pay themselves a huge salary, then just leave the company all fucked. I think we need someone like Jacob Wolf to help us cover that. Seems weird. Isn't that like putting the hen in the hen house? Weird. Anyway, whatever. I guess he'll overcome more problems.
It's all right.
The way, the irony of calling your company Overcome and then you just give up. I can't please. It's too on the nose.
He hasn't given up.
He only explicitly said it's his side hustle. Now imagine that as well. Cool. Oh, now that money I invested. She side hustles it. Oh, brilliant. Oh, we'll keep doing that on weekends. What are you talking about?
I just can't imagine.
What a world.
Being an investor in Jacob Wolf's company and then reading on Twitter that it's now his side hustle. Like,
oh, it'd be mad, wouldn't it? I know.
What the fuck, man? I put money into this.
You'll know this. I'll tell you the reason why that is also egregious. Because here's what people told me, who were my advisors in business for this company, when we were originally going to raise a bunch of funding and we were going to have like the company fully funded. They told me that when you raise like that as the individual going to your friends and family, what you're actually basically selling them isn't even your idea. You're selling them that they know you, so they can trust that you won't give up, that you will try your hardest. And because they trust you and who you are, they know if they give you your money, you'll do something good with it. Well, in this analogy, that's like he did that, but then he's just turned around and sort of just be like, well, I mean, the company didn't make it. It's like, I invested in you, motherfucker. You were supposed to go balls to the wall the whole way on this. You can't bail. That's the one person who can't in this analogy. Like, so yeah, just funny how things work out in that way. Because I'll tell you what, if I was someone who himself had done that, I wouldn't maybe be the one shouting from the rooftops like, why isn't everyone calling out people who take investment and pay themselves the money? You fucking idiots, you. You're doing that. And the maddest thing is, who should call them out? Me, someone who's never done that, you fucking idiot. And by the way, I don't think anyone's ever listened to any of my content if they managed to come to the conclusion that I don't call out people like Reggie and fucking Steve and Clark. What are you talking about? If anything, mate, I'm just so legit they still do content with me, mate. That's because I actually know how to keep it in my pants. Like, I've called out those people 1 million times, mate. I've always said, by the way, isn't that Richard's main thing that he always blames the American owners because he hates the way they do the franchise model? It's like, oh, that's what our main bugbears do. Come on. Come correct on that one. Come on.
Also, I think even the owners themselves at this point in time would agree that they took on too much venture capital. But it's more like, I think the other thing too is it's just more complicated, especially with like the more endemic owners. So, you know, the orgs that existed prior to the venture capital rush. So, you know, TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid, these kind CLG, these kind of teams, if they didn't take the venture capital, they would have died.
Those are good businesses, some of those actual ones. Yeah.
like there wasn't a choice. Like, I think that's the misnomer. It
No,
wasn't
basically the point here is this, Monty. Even though some of those were actually like profitable companies as far as I know at the time, or doing well and like balancing the budget, if everyone has to get 10 million to buy an LCS spot and you don't do it, you're not involved in that game anymore. So you are just priced out of the market risk. Yeah, true.
And the thing is, Riot intentionally, I don't think, like, Riot didn't really care about the money. Like, they're a big company. Maybe they cared about it a little bit, but at the same time, like, they're paying out, you know, at this point in LCS franchising, they've paid out more money to those teams in revenue share than the teams have paid to them in terms of franchise fees. Especially because they've frozen franchise fees right now. And for you guys, it was never about the money. What it was about, and this isn't even necessarily a wrong thing from Riot, was that they wanted to know that there was enough investment behind these teams so that the teams were serious and had stability, right? They needed to know that the teams had skin in the game with Riot. And also, it created value for the teams. Like, you can say, well, you shouldn't have raised that money. But if like LEC slots, for example, the last LEC slot, Misfits sold for like $30 million, which was way more than the 8 million or 10 million that it cost to buy that slot. So it was objectively a good investment, you know, for the investors in that org. Was it the 100-to-1 investment that they had dreamed of? No, but it was still a win. You know what I mean? And so you had to have, like, Riot needed to have the capital into these teams to show that they could last for a long time, that they could, you know, hang around through the bad times if necessary.
Implying as well, even though it was more overt in Overwatch, I also always took it when they did those things where, you know, there was teams obviously got turned down, like initially when they were back, like Immortals initially got turned down famously, or in VCT, Optic didn't get into it, you know, like another implication of that thing of why you have to have a certain amount of money and they vet how your company does its like business structure, was the implication that, like Overwatch, you're supposed to actually be growing your own fan base and making, like, you're like a partner with them of making the future NBA, where you're going to have your set of fan bases that come to your events that buy merch from you. That was also implied. That's also, you're right, Monty. You didn't have to have enough money just to buy the players and put them in the game. You were essentially supposed to have X million more so that you could build out the rest of the industry. And obviously that, unfortunately, that part hasn't happened at all. Like, so that part, no one's been able to keep up their end on. Yeah, of course.
But like, I don't really understand the idea of criticizing endemic team owners for taking capital, because their only choice, if they didn't do that, somebody else would have bought the franchise slot, because there was a feeding frenzy at the time, guys. There would have been traditional sports teams that would have bought that franchise spot, and then their teams would have been worthless.
Yeah, the weird thing, essentially, think about it this way, Monty. Being as Riot are the ones who controlled the franchise system, as Monty just told you, if Jack didn't buy his LCS spot, then guess what? FaZe Clan would be in the LCS instead. How does that? Now, does the FaZe Clan owner losing loads of money while paying himself a contract, how does that fix LCS? Because in this analogy, the Jacob Wolf premise is that if we call out Jack and Steve and Reggie, somehow them not doing that fixes the whole thing. But as you said, it's a fucking finite, it's a zero-sum game. There has to be someone takes that spot. If it isn't them, it's someone else. It's the exact same problem. So ultimately, Riot set up the system. They did. They set up the system.
And Activision Blizzard. And Activision Blizzard, obviously.
Yeah, that was, if right? Anything, they spurred the whole thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and like both of these, and they fed off each other to like create the feeding frenzy. And like, you just had to be there in 2017 when everybody was like going crazy trying to get into both Overwatch League and LCS in North America. It was huge. I mean, the contracts were actually made better because there was competition between Activision Blizzard and Riot. Like the owners got better deals in the contracts, like better provisions, better clauses, because they were able to play both sides against, you know, in their own benefit, basically. So, you know, and if it hadn't been Cloud9, then it would have been Stan Kroenke, who came into, you know, the big American sports owner who came in and to Overwatch League, or Robert Kraft, who owner of the Patriots, who came in to Overwatch League. Like, they could have ended up with an LCS team as well. There were enough people to fill out those slots, guys. It was a competitive process. And basically, if your choice is, I have to take on venture capital because my org that I've worked on for years goes to worthless if I don't get one of these slots, what the fuck would you do? Like, nobody likes how this turned out, but it wasn't the fault of the endemic owners that they were making these decisions. So, all right, shall we take some viewer questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we'll take a quick break, guys. Be back with viewer questions.
Right, we're back from our break. But before we get into the viewer questions, where we will answer curated questions from our viewers, we have another promotion, which is over at Esports Bet. They have their 777 promotion, as well as that red letter one that we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Now, to access this, you have to listen very carefully. You need to go to the promotions page. So when you're on Esports Bet, on the left column, you have the Esports, Sports, and that says promotion, has a little picture of like a present, like a cadeau, if you're French. And then you click on promotion there, and you need to activate this one. So you're going to go to the one. This is the 777 one. So it's going to be the... it's a first time deposit bonus. This is one where it's a 200% first deposit bonus capped at 200 USDT or equivalent. The minimum deposit is 10 USDT or equivalent. The bonus is applicable for all supported cryptocurrencies, but each account can only claim this once. And as usual, certain turnover obligations apply. Go to the website, redeem it. You can always contact the customer support if you have any issues anywhere or any queries or any of that is unclear. And this is basically just like a mega deposit bonus. So if you've ever deposited on Esports Bet, this is a great way to do it.
And you can get the deposit bonus whether you're new or a returning customer.
All right, it's everyone. Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Everybody. All right, let's go into viewer questions. This is in the SI questions on our Discord for Discord subscribers, which is one of the best ways to support us guys as well, in addition to our sponsors. If you could be a world championship caliber athlete in any sport, which sport/position would you choose? And is there a game you wish you had become a major esport but never really did?
Did he say it had to be a sport for the first part? Is it like
if you could be a world championship caliber athlete in any sport, which sport?
What would you pick for that? Because that is the thing. I've actually done this answer on Side Select before, so I actually know what mine is. But what would yours be? What sport would you pick?
I would want to play American football, and I think I would want to be a linebacker because they can, or a safety because they can actually call the defense. You know what I mean? From the middle of the field. And oftentimes it's I like the linebacker position because it gives you versatility as to whether you're dropping back or you're actually providing additional pressure. And you can kind of, read the offense and make adjustments on the defensive side.
Right, basically.
You quarterback the defense. So I think that's what I would want to do.
Here's the problem. I think you've actually fallen into the trap because this is where on Side Select, I think I had the clever answer. Because the reason why, Monty, I would never pick that one, the two sports I would never, ever, ever pick would be American football or UFC, mixed martial arts. Sure. Because you get the shit beaten out of you. Even if you're the best, you still get the shit beaten out of you. That's why that sport sucks. If I'm picking any sport, I actually think the answer, quite frankly, is unfortunately to be something like a striker in the English Premier League in football. And the reason why is because actually, in theory, if people hit you, that's actually a foul. So you don't get fouled as much. You also it's not like baseball where, the problem with being a baseball pitcher is it's such an unnatural movement that you definitely will wreck your arm by the end of your career. Like you're going to spend your old age just sitting, never moving your arm and having people hand you glasses of iced tea when you're on a porch somewhere. Like you can actually be a football striker and just end your career when you're like 37 in decent health. You get to live in your home country for half the games. Even the away games are just a bus ride or a car ride away. You're not traveling across a whole country. You get paid insane amounts of money. You have all the best elements of fame, while actually on some level, it's not quite as bad as being an American celebrity. They're still up your ass if they're the papers, but they're not quite as bad as the American ones are. I actually think it's just the sweet spot. It's like the sweet spot of mega well paid, cool thing to do. It's fun to be really the best at it. I also think you just have the lowest downsides that you're not traveling a million years. You're not having to fucking get wrecked by injuries. I actually think it's just like the sweet spot as far as any sport goes. Because like I say, the problem with the other sports is you just get injured, mate. That's the issue. Like even the NBA to some degree, even though it's supposed to be no contact, your ankles are going to end up fucked. It's just the way the sport goes in it. So I think the downside of sport, I think, is the impact on the rest of your life.
Is there
if
a game?
If it was ego reasons, I can't lie, that would be sick to. But put it this way, here's the thing: if I couldn't be hurt, Monty, I'd obviously be like Daryl Dawkins and just fucking end people's careers. Like I'd just be motherfuckers in wheelchairs. Yeah, of course. That looked sick. That looked amazing when he was doing that. I actually, by the way, that's how you know that I don't like the modern NFL, mate. Darren Dawkins. Fucking Dawkins, rather. Brian Dawkins. He would never even be able to get through one game now. He would never get through one game now, mate. He would never get. It would be a penalty immediately. Dude, all the hits he did, every single hit would be a penalty, wouldn't it? Come on.
If you look at Dawkins or like Atwater or some of those like OG safeties, that was fucked up what they used to do back in the day.
They were terrifying. Yeah, of course. They were terrifying, mate. Like, when people do that thing where they used to make fun of his intro when he came out like Weapon X. Dude, if you were like a wide receiver, that would be terrifying to see this guy. Because he looks just fuck, and he's just like actually like it fucking looks like a wild animal, doesn't he? Love scary. Horse.
Is there a game that you wish had become a major esport but never really did? I mean, the joke for me is obviously Overwatch, right? that's the obvious joke, because probably my life would be very different now. But
mate, if you actually think of, there's one thing no one's ever thought about. What if every aspect had worked out in the Overwatch League? Guys, they had like a Disney TV partnership. They had literally, as Monty said, they didn't just have like Cloud9 and TSM buy-in. They had like real giant sports owners buy-in for tens and tens of millions of dollars. They were literally going to build stadiums in each city and have like home event. Like the actual, like, look, the ambition of the project was enormous. I mean, look, I never thought it could make it there. But if you imagine the alternate world where it worked, it would have completely changed the whole industry. Of course.
Yep.
All of esports would be different right now. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to do it. I thought that the upside of the ambition was worth it, and I got what I needed to get out of it, so I was fine in the end. But in a non-joke sense, because it did sort of become a major esport for a while there for the first couple of years, I think the answer is probably Warcraft 3 for me. I mean, RTS in general. I hope there's a new RTS that becomes a major esports title, whether it's Stormgate or one of the other ones that are coming up. Like, I love RTS, man. I just want RTS back.
The obvious one I would pick would obviously just be like some version of Quake be the #1 game in the world. Because I always thought the thing about Quake that made it very compelling to follow is it's a bit like if you follow tennis. It's such a consistent game that the absolute best players can consistently be in like the top 8, top 4 all the time. So you get these just incredible rivalries of like the same two people battling for years and years and having ups and downs, and one gets their lead in the fucking rivalry and then the other one has a stronger period. It's just super compelling.
Which C9 team is more doomed, LCS or CS2? This is a question for you.
I mean, at the moment, LCS easily. Like, I always think people do forget that, like, the LCS region is, like, nowhere near the LPL and the LCK. Here's the difference. Cloud9 CSGO team, CST2 team now, even now can fuck around and be, like, the 5th best team in the world or something. Like, they're, like, a pretty strong team. The problem they have is they don't have, like, an AWPer, and they've got some issues with, like, obviously they've let talents like Shiro go, so they probably need another player move. But, like, actually, it's not a bad team. Like, there's still strength in the squad. So it's easily the LCS one, because the LCS one's outright failure. Like in a sane world, the LCS is supposed to be in the position like C9 is. Like we were talking about G2. Like if they do awesome and they dominate the LCS, we're supposed to be like, is this the 11th best team in the world? Right now, it's like, is this even a top 3 NA team? That's how different the stakes are.
I think what's crazy about the C9 roster is that there is a universe where this is a top 10 team in the world right now.
Yeah,
because
why not?
Think about LCK, like. Outside of, I mean, even Hanwha is like kind of ropey. And then you get to what? Kwangdong? Like they beat D+ and KT. Are they the 4th best team in Korea? Is a top end Cloud9 worse than Kwangdong? Like, are they actually worse than like LNG in their current state? I mean, probably. But you can literally start having a conversation. Once you get into like the 5th best team in LCK and LPL, like you can start maybe making arguments for other teams. Yep. Like I think you can definitely make a case for G2 right now. Can you make a case for Cloud9? Absolutely not. But should you be able to make one? Like is there a universe where if they were dominating LCS that you would put them in the top 10? I think you could. The talent is there. Heading to Rome, Paris, and the French Riviera, what is the most prestigious way to explore these places? I have no idea. Most prestigious way? I don't know, man. To Monty, will we see a return of your parody songs anytime soon for LFN? I don't know, maybe. I guess I could start doing those again. Those were pretty popular back in the day. I haven't written one in a while. To Thorin, who would you want to rap battle from esports, either to roast or that would make a great opponent?
If you mean it actually has to be good, like it actually has to be someone with skills, then it needs to be someone who can actually do like rap or something, wouldn't it? So it'd have to be like some good commentator. So I don't know, like fucking like Uber from the Overwatch League or something. He's pretty good at talking fast while still like making coherent points. I mean, if it's just to be funny, I'd obviously pick like Reggie, but I don't think Reggie could get 2 sentences out. So you know what? If we're going to combine the two, I think the obvious one would be Captain Flowers, wouldn't it? Because he can do the rap battle, but at the same time, I'd be able to get a lot of good lines off on him, wouldn't I? Let's put it that way. So there you go. There you go. I will give him credit though. If you saw, even I retweeted it. That was a funny one the other day where he was playing like some sort of like a custom game, I'm assuming, with like Overly and a bunch of other people, and then they were memeing in like the text in the chat, of the game itself, and then they said something like Captain Flowers wrote like, "Is anyone streaming? Because I want to know if I can like go crazy this or whatever." Right. And Overly said, "Yeah, I'm streaming to OnlyFans." He said, "Right, so no viewers then, so we're okay then." Like, which is like that is actually straight fire. Okay, well done, well played. I'll tip my hat. That was well executed. That was good, man.
That is funny.
That was pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Can't lie. It's pretty good.
What happens to coaches and players that don't get signed? Well, there are some that are part of the broadcast and stream. Do other players just grind solo queue or just go back to school? Players such as PoE, Sven, Revenge. I mean, Revenge has said he's going back to school. I actually had a long conversation when Revenge was in Korea. After I got here, basically in November, Revenge was in Korea, and I had dinner with him and talked to him about that and encouraged him to go back to school. So I definitely was on board with his retirement plans. Sven, I think, will keep playing. It depends on the player. Some of them just go back down to ERLs for a while or play in other regions. Some of them turn to coaching. Some of them go back to school. Some of them get scholarships. Like Amazing is on a scholarship for college right now, the old TSM jungler. X Special got a college degree, like coaching Harrisburg, I think. So it really depends on the player. Some of them just kind of go behind the scenes in the industry as well.
By the way, here's how I know that everyone last year during that LCS walkout who kept banging on about how important NA talent is to you, none of you give a fuck, because you're all just cool that Licorice and Revenge don't even play in the LCS. That is the NA talent, you moron. Yeah, if you're okay with that and that's not some big deal, then you never cared. That's why I knew you didn't care anyway. I knew that you'd always rather watch Berserker carry than give a fuck about Licorice doing all right. Like you don't care about NA talents, guys. No one does, sadly. Because I actually think like the Revenge one's brutal, mate. After last year, why wouldn't he be in a team? He did everything you could ask him to do. That's like an instant signing to a good team. What are we doing at this point in time?
Well, he got fucked by the EG collapse, right? So, and everybody else already being signed. But at the same time, like, I think the conversation that you have with players and the conversation I had with Revenge is, what is the upside? Now there isn't even the ridiculous salary. So if he can go back to medical school, why the fuck would he just like hang around waiting to maybe get into an LCS team for not even that much money anymore? It's just pointless. Like if you have other good options, there's no point in, maybe getting back into the LCS someday. It's only for people who don't have other options. Monty has previously stated that he would have went to law school if not esports. I did not say that. I said I could have gone to law school. After I worked in a law firm for a few years, it was pretty clear to me that I did not want to go to law school.
It's impressive, though, isn't it? The way people not only can misunderstand things you just told them, but they will actually tell you about your life inaccurately. It's mad, isn't it? What a world the internet is. It's so crazy. Isn't it?
Did you have a particular field of law you wanted to pursue? No. Or were you considering law just for the lucrative salary? No. I watched how it crushed people's souls and decided it sucked. Speaking of, here's the next sentence.
If people don't know, that's actually the reason why I actually quit trying to be a computer programmer, mate, because I knew a guy who was one of my inspirations, and he used to have to, for real, just drink like a whole bottle of red wine every day when he got home from work, because the stress on all those crunches was just like insane. And I was like, wait a minute, that's what success looks like. Fuck this noise, I'm out. If that's success, I'm not fucking opted into that. Looks crazy.
Here we go. His next sentence. Speaking as a new grad in Big Law, who hates his life. So Big Law is the major firms in like New York or Washington, D.C. or San Francisco or L.A., right? Where you make a lot of money, but you work 80-hour weeks and you are the bitch of all the partners. I'm in corporate mergers and acquisitions. I'm assuming Monty would have been more interested in litigation. So look, I knew some people, like I worked for like a very high-end boutique firm with a bunch of partners who had formerly been in Big Law. And my job was actually awesome. Okay, guys, as far as law goes. But I didn't want to become a lawyer because like the grind is so crazy, especially if you have, the debt from a top 10 law school. You have to pay that off. And then you just have to go basically make a bunch of money at these big law firms. Litigation is more interesting, but I honestly respected one of the guys who was an associate who kind of worked off his debt and then he went and became a public defender. Like, trial law, I think, is really interesting. Unfortunately, like, the sexiness of the trial is only a very, very small part of the case. I mean, the prep, the discovery, the deposit, like, the whole process of getting ready for trial, like, can take years, and then you get, you know, a couple weeks in court. So, like, it's rough, man. Like, you can't just be a baller badass in court for the most part. I mean, if that was an option, honestly, you know what would be fun? Being a federal judge would be fun. But again, you have to go through all the bullshit for years, and then you don't even make money when you're on the bench, right? It's when you retire and go back into private practice that you get the mega bucks after having been a federal judge.
And someone might kill you, to be fair. Someone else might kill you. Some cartel.
Sure. But being a federal judge is fucking cool. Like, being on the Supreme Court would be fun as fuck. Okay. You just completely unhinged. You get to write the most wacky ass opinions. Like, fucking, that is a great job. But the problem with law is big debt. And then to pay off that debt, you have to take a shitty job, and all the good jobs that are fun, you don't get paid money. So thumbs down to being a lawyer. CS has a map rotation. Whenever Valve feels like it would LoL benefit from having a champion rotation where a certain amount of champions are active for the year and only they receive changes? Look, I think this is kind of inevitable, if I'm being honest, guys. Like, all right, I'm just gonna float this out there. There was a tweet from the guy who's the lead producer of League of Legends who said in 2025 there would be massive changes coming to League of Legends. One of the core problems with League of Legends right now is that the barrier to entry is so high in this game with 160 champions that I don't see a war. And like, a lot of these champions aren't like balanced properly. Perhaps if they are redoing the engine or making a new game, perhaps they introduce champion pools, and you have seasonal champion pools where they can actually spend time. They have two different teams, one that's working on live balance, and then they have another team like fixing a bunch of the champions while they're not in the live version of the game, right, for the next season. But they need to acquire new users, and they have to have some sort of like sexy splash back into the scene, whether it's with a new engine. I mean, look how it did for Dota. Look what it did for Counter-Strike, right? Smite is now going through the engine upgrade. 160 champions is too many fucking champions for a new player to learn. It is daunting. It is inaccessible. It is insane. So I don't know what he means by 2025 is going to be a huge change, but it would not surprise me to see like an engine upgrade and or, you know, trying to control the champion pool a little bit more.
All you need to do is listen to those stories that people like Peter Dunn and Inspired told in my interviews, where Giorgio had played League for something like 2 or 3 years, and he didn't know things like what like a fucking gangplank barrel does, because he just hadn't played that interaction. He didn't know it could crit, for example. Right? That's someone who's been trying for a couple of years to be pro, guys, and he still has a massive information deficit compared to someone who'd even just played the game 3 more years but isn't even as good as him. So there's how the new player is going to be way behind the curve. And then the other reason to me, Monty, as to why it's obvious you should do this is a mixture of the fact that 1, this is a fucking drafting game, and 2, what are the big drafting competitive disciplines? Trading card games have always worked this way. You have a specific set of decks that are allowed. You have certain things explicitly are not allowed because they're too OP, and you go through cycles, don't you? So to me, I would even make it like that, Monty. I would make themes of champions. I would pick like, right, in the spring, we're going to bring in this theme. It's like 40 champions or something. You pick the number 40, 50, whatever. And I mix in like a few assassins, a few mage, and then it's like, as you say, you could even then basically have the design teams beforehand, sort of making that mini ecosystem be able to work, and then you sort of unleash it. Then you go and work on the next one, don't you, while you wait for the next season to come, and then you introduce it. There'll be some overlap, there'll be some that switched in and out. I think that would just be a very good approach if you do it, because the obvious problem League's always had is, you notice every other game that does characters and different like specific character, they're not trying to do 100 plus like this. They all think that's too many, Monty. Overwatch did, fucking Quick Champion. They want to stick with a few and balance those, because they know that the more you get, as well as it being that information burden becomes insane, in, it becomes almost impossible to balance. Like there's always going to be a whack-a-mole thing that becomes crazy OP no matter what you change.
And because TFT is basically a card game, right? It functions a lot like a card game. I mean, they already do the champion pool thing with TFT, so they probably have learned something from that. Yeah, TFT is enormously popular, right? Who has the most crisp jawline in esports? Maui, Flowers, or someone else? I don't know. Those are pretty good ones.
When he says that, the problem is, if you just mean jawline, they have strong jawlines. I think Pimp has an incredibly crisp one. I mean, it looks like a fucking Dorito, his head. It looks so serrated on the edge. Like, I bet if you even, you know that thing that people do when they shave in the Gillette commercial, where they do that thing like this, like, Pimps just have no fingers left if he did that, just before going to stop.
Pimp's a good one.
There you go. That's a good one.
First of all, congrats on the 10 years of SI, and thank you for all your great content. Your ethics/values seem to be greatly influenced by heroic societies, especially reading stuff like chivalry, what virtues you value, the role of men in society, etc. Have you given any thought to how contingent these ideas are to the specific way history has unfolded? Meaning from all the ways society has been conceptualized, this is just one and the current prevailing one. I do not, it says, if this question is confusing, I apologize. But anyway, I recommend the book, The Dawn of Everything by Graeber and Wengrow, which talks about this issue in depth. I don't really understand the question. Have you given any thought to how contingent these ideas are to the specific way history has unfolded?
I think he means stuff like, my guess would be, he means things like, I'm going to guess like specific countries. Like, for example, if countries like England or Germany hadn't had such an influence on the world, you don't know, a lot of these values are just Anglo values. Basically, people don't know. If anything, they only seem like they're from other parts of the world because American culture, British culture has permeated the world through global empires, financial or military. So I know what he means. Essentially, I guess his angle would be, if instead of like pick a random time, it wasn't like the Greeks that took over or the Romans, it was instead, I don't know, at this point in time, some sort of like I don't know, some horde from some other country that didn't have this. Like, how about for the Aztecs, instead of the conquistadors taking over, they never went to South America and the Aztecs just continued on. I'm sure their civilization and values would be very different to ours. Spoiler, they were literally cutting the hearts out of children and believing that if they showed pain, that was like a better sign. It's like energy harvest or something. So I would just go ahead and guess their priorities and values are quite different to mine. So I would say it's somewhat horrifying in some ways, you know?
Yeah, the Aztecs, I know a lot about Aztec ritual tradition. And because I'm very interested in it.
It was crazy shit, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was pretty raw. It was pretty
raw. They were doing stuff like they had like caves they would go and kill kids in, guys. It was fucking crazy shit. Yeah. That's a complete. So I do actually think the guy has a point. My problem is just this. Essentially, I think it depends whether you do believe there is any kind of spiritual force in the world. If you don't and you think it's just nuts and bolts, then for you, yeah, it's just random chance that these particular societies succeeded. And so we now say that these are the values. I would say if you believe in any kind of a spiritual component to the world, I think these are just almost like higher values programmed into the realm we're in as they were. And I think actually that's why I've always said, if you ever do look, I don't believe bad people do get away with it. I think actually the fact that they are bad people becomes their punishment. And it means even when they get wealth, power, and so they don't get to actually enjoy it. Like their version of enjoying it's dog shit compared to, in my opinion, what you have if you just live to a higher values. Like then you have the most satisfying success in life, I believe.
I agree with that. After the 2022 TL disaster, Giotto has only coached ERL teams. Do either of you think he will return to the LEC in the coming years? I think he's really underrated as a coach, honestly, especially of young players. I think the problem is that Giotto was best when he was coaching up-and-coming players and kind of unlocking the talents of rosters that may not have a lot of star power. I think that putting him on that super team was something he had never really done before. And he's not really like a super team ego manager. He's more of a efficiency with particular pieces or rookies coach. I think he is a good coach. I just think that project was not suited to his talents.
Believe it or not, I actually think his biggest problem was that he decided to drink from the cursed fucking poisoned chalice that was Bjergsen post-retirement. Because first of all, when Bjergsen came back, he was never the same Bjergsen as before. And I thought Inspired said it best. I actually asked Inspired because he played with Hans Sama in Rogue and then Inspired himself was in the LCS when Bjergsen was there. So I basically said to him, it was when he was there. I said to him, why do you think Hans Sama failed in Team Liquid? And Inspired's answer is, because if you know Hans Sama, apparently he's the guy who wants to like win in lane in 15 minutes and go super hard. And Bjergsen's entire game was the opposite. Bjergsen's entire game was like, let's play safe as possible, sort of scale up and then just win at the end of the match. And so they were just totally missuited. So if you have a massive name like that, you're not going to tell Bjergsen if they're half the play. If you have him, you have him. You're committed to that style. So I think also I actually think that roster, it's on paper that it kills Giotto. I think if you actually saw them in the server, they weren't that good. But if you look on paper, it's too good a roster to fail like that. So I get why, unfortunately, he got fired. And I agree with you. He's somewhere where that was his first chance to have a top team. Before that, he had that Origin team where like he had a few good players, but he never had like a super team. He does, I get the vibe because I've seen this in sports too much. He was the guy, like you say, where if you give him like a bottom half of the table team, he'll overperform and get them to be like fifth or something. But if you give them the best team, it's a very specific type of skill set to work with the big names only. It's why actually we pointed out in this episode, Peter Dunn isn't doing that well so far because it's a totally different frame of reference for him. He's never worked with these types of people before.
Yep. It seems like League of Legends has a lot of problems. Firstly, the game itself is just poor. For example, there are a lot of glitches in the game, and the game never seems to be balanced. Secondly, the professional scene, especially in the West, seems to suffer. Tournaments have poor formats, and leagues contain a lot of structural bottom feeder teams. In my opinion, these problems mostly originate from Riot's desire to have total control over every aspect of the game. I know this is not going to happen, but do you think it would be beneficial for the game if it was more community-owned? I'm thinking about SC2 as an example here, where everyone can organize their own tournaments and balance is mostly handled by the community, as far as I understand it. I mean, yes. Like, this is another example. It's the same thing that Mark Z was doing earlier by saying, like, look, viewership was up even though it was the Super Bowl. It's like, they always do this. Like, wow, viewership was so good for Worlds, even though it probably would be better, even better with a better format. Like, League could be more popular if they actually had better formats. And we can see that a lot of Riot's formats and content decisions have led to the degradation of leagues like the LCS. They haven't been able to maintain that popularity. So, I mean, I think objectively that LCK would be doing better today if it was still being run by OGN, because I think OGN was better at making esports events in Korea. I believe that. Now, they hired a bunch of those people from LCK to work on, or from OGN to work on LCK, but they're still bound by Riot's shitty-ass formats. So I agree. I think League of Legends has been in many ways successful in spite of Riot, not because of them.
Even if you think, pick which one you hate more now, LEC or LCS, right? Take the exact same teams as they currently stand, and if instead of this being a league/tournament circuit format like we currently have, it's like Counter-Strike, and we just had an IM kind of 8 here. Do you know how exciting that would be even with these teams? Take the LEC teams and the LCS teams, chuck them all in a big 16-team tournament with like a big stage performance, like when you get to the top 6. Dude, everyone would watch that. It would be banging. You wouldn't have to watch all the games. You watch the big games, you follow the narratives like that. The format is what kills League, in my opinion, because you already have like a game that, as you say, has problems like viewership wise, especially compared to games like Counter-Strike, and then your circuit's just way worse. Like, I think the thing about tournament formats is they almost always throw up interesting narratives, excitement, like unsurprised ones, dark horses, teams that are dominant. By the way, even just the dominance you get robbed of. Do you know how different it would be if this was like, we just saw this G2 team in League of Legends, they were just winning their 3rd tournament in Europe now? That'd be way different from like, they've almost won one split. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just night and day how the stakes are. Because I always tell people, I don't even anymore make it about the game. I don't think it's just the game Counter-Strike that makes it so compelling. I think the formats are what people love. It's also, if you noticed, I'm sure you find this as someone who's an outsider, it's so easy on a Counter-Strike tournament to just choose when you're going to hop in, like the NFL. Of course, yeah. You just wait till the playoffs and there's a big semi-final. Now I'll jump in. It's different when you watch a whole league. It feels like such a slog, you know, and you've missed all those other weeks. And I think the tournament format is the best thing we ever had in esports, which is why the irony is, Richard's right about this. You know, when we all get mad that these TOs still won't give us double a limb. Guys, we were using double a limb in like 2001 for fucks. We started with double a limb and we've gone to these whack-ass formats and we're never allowed to go back to the best one. Like, it's just, history has just shown it's the best one. Like, it just wins, doesn't it? Come on, guys. It just wins. It's the best.
I'm seeing Dune Part 1 again in theater soon. What are you guys?
I didn't actually mention that you do need to actually subscribe if you want to ask these questions. We forgot to tell you this time. If you want to actually ask questions like this. Oh, you did. Maybe I just forgot it. But just subscribe to our Discord. All good. It's all good.
I'm seeing Dune Part 1 again in theater soon. What are your guys' thoughts on the movie, and are you excited for Part 2? I mean, Thorin is like the biggest Dune aficionado I know, and I'm a big fan of it as well. I mean, I'll give my thoughts in brief. It needed to be. So I love it visually. I think the music, the sound design, the costumes, the production design, all of that, it feels like Dune, which I really, really like. On the other hand, it needed to be a TV, like an HBO miniseries. I wish it had been like Game of Thrones, because a big part of Dune is in the relationships that are developed between the characters. And while I can fill in those relationships in my mind when I'm watching, if you haven't read the books, like, you may not think it's important the way they treated Duncan Idaho in the movie, but if you know what happens in the other books, you realize that the relationship that he has with the Atreides family is extremely important. And when you just kind of skip that, it's going to be really hard to explain things later on, or to have an emotionally impactful Duncan Idaho situation. So it feels really weird the way they rushed through. Like, they wanted to show you the world and the action, but ultimately a lot of the things that become really, really important in later books, they kind of gloss over. And that's going to, if they go that far, it's going to make it very strange for people who haven't read the books. And like, I'm trying not to give spoilers, guys, but it's going to make it real weird if you haven't read the books to like have an emotional reaction to some of these situations later. So I'm also like looking at it from like, where is this going in the future? And I say this is somebody who like really likes, Denis Villeneuve. Like, I really like his work. I thought Arrival was great. And, it's not the direction that's the issue. It's that this needs to, each movie needs to be like an 8-hour-long episode mini-series. You know what I mean? That's my take.
I have on my side channel done a short video where I actually give a review of this movie, and I say essentially it doesn't hold up on the rewatch. I actually think it ended up being quite soulless. Like, I didn't feel any emotional connection to almost any character.
Yep.
Like, the joke is, I think the one I actually had the strongest connection to actually was Duke Leto, and obviously that character dies out pretty quickly in the movie. The actual Isaac, whatever his name is, guy, he actually did a pretty good job, but he's not in the movie. Yeah, he was actually one of the like best parts of the film.
I think some of the casting is very good as well, but
I think some of it's ass. Like I told you already, I think the Cheney casting is absolute ass. I think you didn't do that great a job on a whole bunch of them. And then also the other thing to me is like, oh yeah, by the way, I can already give you the bad news. Villeneuve already said he doesn't have any plans to go past Dune Messiah, so he has no plans for the rest of the series, mate. It's just going to end after the Paul Atreides arc, basically. That's it. That's all you get.
Well,
so I just think it's a wasted opportunity, because the saddest thing is, I actually do think that's a very good director. I think most of his other films are very good. I think his average flaw for a movie is usually quite high, but this is just really one where, like, I don't know if he's too much of a super fan or what it is, but I actually wish he'd been way more ambitious, mate. Like, one thing I did like about the Lynch one is it was mad ambitious for some of the interpretations and ballsy aspects. Look, not all of it worked. Like, I thought the voice weapons thing was kind of whack, but at least you were going for something. This is like just less than some of the parts of Dune, and I'm with you as well. The other part that it misses is actually something I think people don't know if they've never read the Game of Thrones books as well, is actually all the intrigue of what the houses are, and what they represent, and what the past is actually mega important. That builds up like why it's momentous when things happen in the film. You don't get any of that in this film. You just get like hints in it. And so to me, it was just such a wasted opportunity. You could have done so much more with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, you actually, I mean, clearly I think it would have cost more to do the miniseries, but honestly, a lot of the scenes in the book are just dialogue scenes that you can rip pretty much entirely from the
making
book.
Rings of Power or whatever. I'm sure you can just make Dune, surely. Come on.
That's true.
If you're spending like $1 billion for the rights, can't you just do Dune?
I mean, it could have been worse. It could have only been one movie, I guess. I mean, what did you think of the aesthetic? Like, I thought like what they did visually with like the sandworms and stuff was super cool. I love the costumes. I thought the costumes were great.
I didn't find the sandworm part that sick at all. Hasn't everyone done the sandworm like that? Like, I thought that was just whatever. The other problem I had was I personally think the graphics have aged very poorly. Like, when you watch that again, mate, those just look so computer graphics generated. It's ridiculous. Like, they don't play for me. But I was actually shocked when I thought when I rewatched it, the thing I'd enjoy was how sumptuous the graphics. I actually found that part kind of was a bit hollow. I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not super excited for part 2, and I wish it had been a more dialogue-heavy miniseries with actual character relationships, because they're really important, and it actually really fucking matters in future books. And also, like, I'm sad that he's not going the full distance, because clearly like like first it'd be very difficult to film a lot of the stuff that happens in the later books, but that's part of the fun and the challenge of it, right? But putting some of those later books on films would be very strange. Be a very strange experience to watch that. Where can I submit Donk's interviews after Team Spirit's victory at Katowice for the next possible 420 esports cringe moments? Were they bad, Thorin?
Say that again.
Somebody wants us to look at the Donk's interviews after Spirit's victory at Katowice for possible esports cringe.
It's just because essentially, like, he didn't do even the basics. He wasn't like super. He was almost like confused or something. It was just a bit weird, is all. It's just a bit weird. By the way, I've just seen something I have to give to you, Monty, because this is unbelievable. You know what? There are a lot of fucking morons in esports, but the thing that I hate the most is that the ones that become these enormous streamers, like you might. I'm sure you know this person, so you might think differently, but they're so fucking stupid. And the fact that they become popular just shows why I have always believed, and it's been borne out in esports, it is a terrible thing to be incredibly popular, because it actually implies you're a fucking midwit, because that's what you attract. You attract the dumbest, lowest common denominator ever. So I'm going to read out this quote that was a real tweet from 2019. It was from November 2019 by Ninja. This is so mental, but just listen to it. It's a real comment, Monty. It goes, I'll never understand how college and NFL teams allow kickers that just ... miss kicks. I feel like there has to be pools of kickers in the USA that won't miss simple kicks, or snappers that won't miss the snaps. I don't know, man. It seems so silly. Would love opinions on this. That might actually be the most brain dead tweet I've ever seen in my entire life, Monty.
I remember when that tweet came out and he did get mega roasted for it, and he walked it back.
Holy shit.
I mean, it's also...
this is like when those Pats fans used to actually tell me at the end that Gostkowski was a bomb. It's like, bro, he used to hit like 98% of the kicks. And your logic is if he ever misses, he's a bomb. Like, that is actually one of the worst tweets of all time, for real. Like, it's because it just shows he knows nothing about kicking. But he's making such a crazy, broad, like, aggressive statement about it. Like, he doesn't know anything.
It's also funny because, like...
so easy to miss. What are you talking about?
Also, finding NFL
kick in the wind.
Finding NFL caliber kickers is notoriously difficult because college kicking is a shit show, man.
Yep.
Like, it is bad a lot of the time, and it's very, very difficult.
For the problem, Monty, is people like him now who have the mentality you should never miss, and that your job is to hit 100% of kicks. By the way, I don't know any other job in any sport that requires precision where you're supposed to be 100% successful. By his logic, right? Same logic. He ready for the same statement, except here's what's insane, Monty. This is less mad. By his logic, why do quarterbacks ever miss a throw? They should just get people who never miss throws. And then if the wide receiver drops it, you know the obvious answer, Monty, get wide receivers who don't drop.
Well, you just reply to him.
Must be easy.
Why does he ever miss a headshot? Why doesn't he just replace himself with an aimbot?
It's so mad, isn't it? It's so mad. What a mental... I've never seen that one before. Fair play. I hadn't seen that one. That was so bonkers.
No, he did walk that one back, though. I think he realized how bad it was.
Holy moly. That's insane, though.
Recently on Thorin's...
The opposite. It's funny, I'm not even from your sport or country, Monty, but as soon as I encountered the NFL, I remember thinking, bro, they put way too much pressure on these kickers, because even the best kickers ever occasionally miss like a game-winning kick. Like, of course, like the idea you can do that 100% is so absurd. I actually think already, by the way, people like the Gostkowskis and Vinatieri's, when they're on their runs, they are OP as fuck. That's why another reason Belichick's a genius is he got two of them motherfuckers. He just had two of them for he had like a solid almost 20 years of these guys just kicking 100%. It felt like they never missed, did they? It was insane.
Kickers are very important.
Yeah,
to
it's OP as fuck.
To the NFL. I mean, they score more points than basically anybody on the team.
Yeah, if you have a look, they have all the records. If you don't know, guys, for the most points in history are all kickers. So actually, the best kickers actually mad valuable. Yeah, precisely because it's such a nightmare job as well. Think of the pressure. Holy fuck.
All right, we'll do 2 more questions, guys. Recently on Thorin's side, Thorin posted a short video explaining the necessity of meeting art halfway, arguing that sometimes you can grasp the artist's intention, but often the perception of art is also a projection of your own experiences onto the art, and that understanding can enrich the consumption of art. Theories on art interpretation are heavily discussed in literature classes. Therefore, I was curious, what is Monty's general take on how to interpret art? I mean, I'm not sure what exactly you said in this video, Thorin, because I haven't seen it, but there's always going to be the...
was what I get out of a piece of art might not have anything to do with what that guy intended. Like, maybe you tell me you secretly meant the song about his old wife, but if I got some super deep connection from my childhood, then I don't think that one of us is wrong. I think, you know, what I bring to the table affects what I get out of the art, right?
Well, I think also a lot of art is kind of insubstantial and ephemeral by nature, and it's based off of feelings, and so the artist might be trying to evoke certain feelings, but the connections, if they evoke that feeling, the connections to that feeling within the individual perceiving the art is going to be different and random. And I think that's part of what's interesting about being an artist, is having the discussions about the work. And clearly, like, some artists get very bothered because they have a specific intention, but once you put it out into the universe, it becomes its own kind of living organism that gets interpreted in many different ways. And I think my perception of art is basically, I mean, I'm very Jungian in my belief of a collective unconscious, and therefore I think that for the most part, great pieces of art connect with something at a very deep unconscious level of being human in some certain way. And I think especially in the realm of literature, this is why we have enduring mythologies, enduring stories that seem to contain a lot of truths and that stick around for thousands of years, right? Because there is something essential about the human condition that is contained in there. And the same thing could be said about, you know, human religions and all of these aspects. But yeah, I think, I'm not sure. And then there's also the factor that as we got more postmodern, then people started, like, when you're talking about artist's intention, a lot of the times now that we're into, like, once we got into like the 19th and 20th centuries and we started getting into impressionism, at least in visual arts, and surrealism, like, the artist's intent is, I think, intentionally to be rather vague and inaccurate and portray feeling or an alternative perception on reality rather than having a specific hard intention. So I think it's only gotten more, I would say, abstract as time has gone on, and less about artist intention and more about the emotions that arise in the reader/viewer.
I mean, put it this way, I can give you the best example of what my point is when I explain to you that when we make those short, like, hype trailers, like the one about Deft, or I did one about, like, fucking Device in Counter-Strike, or did one about, like, what it's like to lose in Counter-Strike if you're somebody being a lot of finals. I always tell people the reason those hit in a way that I believe, like, ESL's similar versions don't, is because when you watch the ESL one, they're saying all the right things. You're hearing all these famous cliches. Fear is a potent quality in the competitive battlefield of the digital domain. That sounds sick, right? But it just sounds like a guy in a movie trailer saying generic shit. When I do that, I don't actually try to think, what would Deft be thinking? Like, what would it be like to me? No, what I do is I think, what would my feeling be of battling to succeed after a long time, for example, which is what Deft's trying to do. What would happen if people counted me out, but I didn't give up on myself? I'm trying to stir those feelings in myself. Then I express them in the video, which is why, you can disagree if you like, I actually think mine hit and resonate on a rival. Put it this way, there's a reason why, Monty, the comments of loads of mine are literally, I shed a tear. You don't see that on the ESL one, mate. People just go, wow, cool video, dope production. But I don't, that's the difference. I'm trying to actually, within myself, connect to an authentic feeling or memory feeling or sense memory or whatever. Whereas I think sometimes people just think it's like, I'm telling you what to feel. Think this. It's like the person can, unless they have that in them, mate, they're not going to connect to it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, last question for this week. What is your best example of a star performance to the level of Donk at Katowice in another esport or real sport? As a rookie, probably none, but have there ever been as big of a 1v9 performance for a player above the competition like this over one tournament? Is there a donk equivalent that you can think about?
Well, the problem with that is, first of all, remove the 1v9 part. Like, that doesn't even work. Like, I'll tell you the maddest part about this win, Monty, is unfortunately the donk thing did overshadow it. Like, spoiler, Shiro had numbers that would win you the MVP in any other tournament. He's on the same team. So it wasn't 1v9. And then secondly, believe it or not, it turned out there's a player no one even knows, a Ukrainian player called Zontix in this team. By the way, he had numbers that also would be like the sort of numbers that like a star player would put up. So the whole team actually played way above the level. But if he means like, has there been anyone who sort of came out the gate this dominant? The closest have to be the greatest players of all time. Has to be like Faker when he came along in OGN and was basically a contender for best player already. Like he actually was. If you don't know, you remember this, Monty. The first split Faker played was the split where they did the All-Star voting, and when everyone voted in Ambition, because he had to be one at that time because of his status, there was people who were like, maybe it should have been Faker in his debut split. That was a real discussion we had back then. That's how cracked this guy was from day one. Similarly, you go and you look, I thought the obvious one, I said it on Twitter, was Life in StarCraft 2. If people don't remember, Life in StarCraft 2, in his first Code S season, beat Checksnote's MVP to win the title. At the time, the GOAT of the game, if people don't know. Like, that's pretty fucking insane. The point is, obviously, it's going to be very scarce, like, on the ground of these people. But you have to pick prodigies. That's to just be, like, cooler when he came along. I think he was 15 or something when he was like winning ESWC or whatever. Like, there's only going to be a few because this was like a mad outlier in history, obviously. And if anything, I'll give mad props in this sense. It's actually in some regards even more impressive because this guy's doing it in 2024 in the Counter-Strike franchise. Notice any of the examples I gave were like 10, 15 years ago. Like, we had to go back a while to get to those. The game's massive now. Like, so many people playing. So the idea you could walk in and be this good, you have to be like a potential great, all-time great player. You couldn't do it otherwise. Do you have one that you would pick? Can be sports as well, apparently.
I mean, no, I would say Faker would be the closest one that I've seen in any game, just because, I mean, even from his first game, he made a massive splash, winning his first game against Ambition, who you spoke on, and he didn't win the title. I mean, I from the stuff I've seen about Donk at this tournament, I mean, he had an all-time great Counter-Strike performance over the last 20 years, and he did it in a rookie tournament, and he did it over more games during that tournament, right, than other players.
Maps,
yeah.
Yep.
So I think this sounds like quite a special moment to me in the history of esports or regular sports in general. So when you say like he might be the GOAT, you wouldn't be like, you literally said here after watching him for this one tournament, say that he might be the GOAT of Counter-Strike in the future. Like, you don't shell that out very frequently unless there was something really extraordinary that would have happened.
No, that's the point to make, is I actually feel like, if anything, the problem is that everyone always overhypes the brilliant rookies. So, like, when we said m0NESY was insane when he came along, that's because he just held it together and was really good. Like, it wasn't doing what Donk did. Even teams like Simple and Zero didn't actually immediately do this. They were very good, but the point is, because the other thing that was impossible at this, Monty, is this. I've never seen this ever in esports. He didn't at all choke in the playoffs. That's the part that's insane, Monty.
I was literally just waiting.
Yeah, I was just waiting. Not even like, I'm not talking about choke like shit the bed. Just have a game where you're just all right. You know what I mean? Just have a game where like you do okay, and then your team loses the map and you lose the tournament. That didn't ever happen. That's the part that will never be replicated. I've never seen a player both have the skill to be the best ever in tournament one, but then never fail either. Like, my analogy was, it's like that moment in The Matrix. Imagine if Neo just did do the first jump as well, never even fell. What the fuck would that even be? Even in The Matrix, they have that great point where they say Noah makes the first jump, because the idea is everyone has to. That's like what going on stage is usually like for rookies. So it's the idea you also somehow never got affected mentally. That's probably the most inconceivable part, because there were people with talent, but it's normally you can just bank on people to fail when they're young because they haven't ever been in that scenario. So that was also and by the way, I'll even shade this in there. People might not even realize this is also even crazier, because normally if you're a mega hyped rookie carrying, everyone's going to be on your side because of the story. Because he is Russian and it was a Polish crowd, the crowd was against him even in the final, guys. The crowd didn't want him to win, and he didn't give a fuck and still just dominated. So, like, yeah, that is impossible. And I actually think it does almost, like, the joke is I even struggle for sport. Like, the sports analogies have to be like Mike Tyson or something, you know what I mean? Like, some insane shit like that, because you just struggle otherwise, because everyone normally has a ramp-up time, don't they? Even the great players of all time have a ramp-up time. Like, I guess this is like, I don't know, fucking Dan Marino coming into the NFL or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, even in the Faker example, like, you guys have to remember, he didn't win his first split. Like, he got knocked out in the semifinals by MVP Ozone. And yes, MVP Ozone did go on to win that final, but they were a huge underdog on that final coming into CJ Blaze. And like, that was one of the most shocking upsets, especially because it was 3-0 for MVP Ozone in League of Legends finals history. Like, frankly, like, they were such huge underdogs to CJ Blaze. And so, they weren't even losing in the semifinals to the tournament favorites, even though they did win. They did lose to the tournament winner, the eventual tournament winner. Oh no, they lost to Blaze. Excuse me, I'm being dumb. They lost to Blaze. Am I thinking about this right? No. They lost to MVP.
No, you get it wrong.
No, I'm right.
It was also.
I'm right. So yeah, it was Ozone that they lost to, and yeah, I mean, I think this was. Faker did have some ramp up time before he got to the point where he won the title the next split, right? So yeah, it took a while. So yeah, I think this instance was pretty unrivaled in many ways. All right, guys, we're gonna call it there for today. Thank you very much for your questions. We only didn't get around to a couple, so feel free to resubmit them for the next episode. We'll be back next week with more, not LCS, but LEC finals conversation. LCK, LPL will all be back on by the time we get back. So we'll see you then.